It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock and thank you very much for joining me. This is the Martin Daubney Show, broadcasting live from Westminster. The sharp-eyed amongst you might spot that I'm not actually Martin Daubney. He's off doing what all good men are doing at this time of year, running around making sure everything's set for Christmas. No, he's not. He's probably in the pub. But you're joining me and I'm really grateful for your company, so thank you for joining me. Now, we have a cracking show coming up for you. We are obviously tackling the big story of the day. Sara Sharif, her father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the 10-year-old's horrific murder. The judge said Sara suffered a campaign of torture and that none of the defendants had shown a shred of remorse. And Brexit. Is this the day Brexit dies? I think we've had this one before, haven't we? Less than 10 years after the vote to leave, Britain could once again be under the control of the European Court of Justice. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset relations with the EU, but will he just bow down to Brussels again? He's done it before, remember? And Nigel Farage, yes, that man, has met Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence amid speculation that the billionaire will make a multi-million-pound donation to Reform UK. We're bringing you up to date on that breaking story indeed. And, yeah, more globe-trotting, possibly, for Keir Starmer. The Chagos Islands, and this is another breaking news story for you. Is this another blow for, yes, that's Sir Keir Starmer. The new Mauritius Prime Minister says the Chagos Islands deal struck by our Prime Minister isn't good enough and he wants to reopen those talks. And finally, Waspi women, a subject very close to my heart. Labour has ruled out compensation for almost 4 million women who claim they lost thousands of pounds because of changes to the state pension aid, ignoring an official payout recommendation. Indeed, yes. Just how much do Labour hate old people, and in particular today, old women, it seems. That's what we've got coming up in our show. You really don't want to miss anything. But it's not about me. It's not even about Martin and what he's doing on his day off today. It is about you and your opinion. So get in touch with all the stories we're talking about today and let me know your views. You can talk about, as I said, what we're talking about, and it's so close to Christmas. Are you ready? Are you enjoying? Any case, this is about you, this show. gbnews.com/your say. Get in touch now. Want to talk to you, want to spend the afternoon with you. We've got loads to get through. But first, let's get those news headlines from Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of the 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanagh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded, and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns.
This poor child was battered with great force again and again. Some of the injuries require special mention because they demonstrate the almost unbelievable torture to which Sara was subjected in the last weeks of her life. The medical experts identified a fracture in the hyoid bone in Sara's neck. This is a very unusual injury and was the result of very vigorous and energetic manual strangulation, quite possibly on more than one different occasion. Sara sustained a serious brain injury a few days before she died as a result of a blow to her head.
Meanwhile, the automatic right to home educate an at-risk child could be scrapped under new legislation being introduced in Parliament today. The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill follows the case of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, whose family removed her from school before her murder last year. It would give local authorities new powers to ensure children in unsafe environments attend school and create a national register for children not in education. Charities warn the funding promised for family support services falls far short of what's needed. However, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says too many children have been failed by the state, calling the proposals a seminal moment for child protection.
The measures that I'm setting out today are about how we protect children and keep them safe, that we've got much clearer visibility of where children are and where parents make a request to home educate their children, where they take them out of school, that if we have safeguarding concerns or a child protection investigation is underway, we'll make sure that local councils are able to deny that request that parents have if they're concerned about the well-being of children. There's a range of other measures in the bill that we're setting out today about how we all need to work together to share information, whether that's police, health, education, to really work to protect children and to keep them safe. It's a landmark piece of legislation.
Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have been provided. The government has rejected calls for compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age. The Work and Pension Secretary says paying a flat rate to all women born in the 1950s would cost taxpayers more than £10 billion and wouldn't be fair. Women Against State Pension Inequality, also known as Waspi, say they weren't properly informed about the changes. While Liz Kendall admitted there was a delay in notifying women, she insisted most were aware of the pension age rise. She has now confirmed there will be no compensation scheme, despite calls for one. A man who received child abuse images from convicted paedophile Alex Williams, the same individual who shared material with BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, has been spared jail. 25-year-old Jack Davies pleaded guilty to possession of indecent images of children and Class A drugs. His defence argued that a suspended sentence given to Hugh Edwards should apply in his case. Davies has also been ordered to attend rehabilitation and remain on the sex offenders register for 10 years. Stop creating trouble, that's China's message to the UK as tensions flare over spying accusations. Beijing has slammed what it called anti-China clamours from British MPs, accusing them of spreading lies and damaging relations. It comes after Yang Tengbo, alleged to be a Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew, was banned from the UK. MPs are now pushing for stricter controls on foreign influence, while the government insists it's stepping up security. The row threatens to derail recent progress, including Keir Starmer's landmark meeting with President Xi last month. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and thank you for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your company. It's indeed Tuesday the 17th of December, not long to go. I hope you've got everything done, because some of us haven't, and that's why the lovely Martin Daubney is not in today doing his own show, but I'm keeping you company, so really appreciate your time. Time to have a little rest and put your feet up. Unfortunately, we have to talk about a really, really tough story, but it is such an important story. Lovely little Sara Sharif, her father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for her murder after subjecting her to years of horrific suffering. Truly, she was 10 years old. I mean, she's been suffering literally all her life. At the sentencing earlier this afternoon, Justice Kavanagh said the 10-year-old schoolgirl suffered unimaginable pain during more than 2 years of abuse and was ultimately tortured to death. Now, the details are horrific. I don't intend to go into the details on this particular story. So let's talk to our reporter, Charlie Peters, who is outside the Old Bailey for us now. Charlie, I've covered some incredibly tough stories in my time, but this one is another one that should never, ever have happened, and we should have learned lessons in the past. Can you bring us up to date on what's happened today?
Well, Mr. Justice Kavanagh said that the abuse that Sara endured was inconceivable, and he was very careful, he said, about using the term torture as a judge. He said that it's a term that judges should use very sparingly indeed, but he said he could find no other word that would appropriately summarise the abuse and the pain and the suffering that 10-year-old Sara Sharif endured at the hands of those who should have loved her and should have cared for her. Irfan Sharif, her father, was sentenced to 40 years. Bainash Batul, her stepmother, was sentenced to 33 years. And Faisal Malik, her uncle, was sentenced to 16 years for the crimes of murder and for causing or allowing the death of a child. Now, he also went through in an extensive remarks, well over an hour, some of those appalling injuries and the timeline of suffering that Sara endured, starting when she was just 6 or 7. But we also now know, and it has been revealed since those guilty convictions last week, that Sara was at risk from the day she was born. In fact, she was born into a child protection order due to the barbaric nature of Irfan Sharif's past, some of the manipulation, the coercion, the control and the violence that he'd subjected women to in the past were finally able to be reported on. But it was the violence that he subjected his daughter to that was the prime focus today, as it has been throughout an 8-week trial where many jurors heard the most appalling evidence. Forensic pathologists spending weeks going through some of the many constellation of injuries that Sara endured. Now, he said it was inconceivable, but he did say that some of those injuries had to be mentioned, which is why that sentencing remark took so long. We also heard from Olga Damin, that is Sara's mother, who described Sara as an angel who now looks down upon us with heaven. In her statement, where she attended remotely for today's hearing, the first time she's attended remotely any parts of these criminal proceedings, Olga also said that she can no longer endure the violence that she had to face for so long. She also said that she cannot understand still why the sadists put her through that pain. She also described them as executionists, stern words for those who will now spend decades behind bars with those minimum terms. Those sentences were greeted with cheers in the public gallery and smiles from the 3 jurors who'd returned today to attend the sentencing. They did not have to be here, but it was clear from the emotion on their faces that after being selected to attend those criminal proceedings and hearing all that evidence during the trial, they were left open-mouthed at some points in that trial when some of the evidence was revealed. They had to come back today, those 3, to see justice being handed down. They were crying at multiple points during those proceedings. We also saw Mr. Justice Kavanagh. I think I detected some emotion, actually, in his voice as his remarks were read out, particularly when he described how Sara Sharif was forced to wear a hijab. And again, when at the end of his remarks, he decided to pay tribute to Sara. He said she was a beautiful little girl, always smiling, even amid the campaign of torture that she was being subjected to. And he pointed to, just quickly, Dawn, footage of Sara smiling and dancing in front of the television in the days before her death. But justice has now finally been handed down.
We hope so. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters, for bringing us up to date on the horrific story. But justice has been done. And as Charlie just said, you probably heard, I've covered many court cases over many years, but I have never heard a judge sound quite as emotional as talking about Sara. And obviously we've had these stories before. Baby P, Victoria Columbia. We've heard these stories before. It should never happen again. But it does keep happening, doesn't it? So let's talk to Peter Williams now, Director of the Family Education Trust. Thank you very much for joining me today, Peter. Peter, justice appears to have been done, sense has been seen. But, Peter, the question on everybody's lips is, why does this keep happening?
Well, I think the answer to that, very sadly, is a failure of safeguarding because of a misplaced attitude towards cultural integration. We know from this case that, unfortunately, Sara had a hijab on, and so in many cases her bruises were not found because of that hijab. She was covered up. And this just shows that there needs to be an approach to cultural integration whereby we really do, and actually not just that, but also catching the fact that, again, the father was somebody who had engaged in violence against women. There needs to be targeted noticing of these kind of facts, and therefore a kind of integration where we say, if there's a history here, maybe even if there is a cultural history within particular communities, then we do need to have heightened awareness and heightened approaches to child safeguarding so that we catch these kind of issues before they become something as horrifying as this.
We do have a long and very sad list of children that have suffered in this way at the hands. I mean, you know, Baby P, we can all remember, Victoria Columbia, you know, Nubia Baroma, Angelica Casilla. There's a list of names going back decades, and nothing seems to be done. I was listening to a social worker being interviewed, and she's saying, we are so snowed under, we can't cope. Our hearts break with the case studies we have to deal with, but we can't cope as well. So there's something going horribly wrong, and what needs to be done to stop another child suffering this awful, appalling fate?
Well, aside from what I've already said, I think also that the fact that we underfund our social services as well is something that needs to be looked at. Simply resourcing is a fundamental problem. Even in the legal system itself is chronically underfunded. And so justice cannot happen when you have a system that cannot take these kind of cases to the degree that they exist. So there's a wide number of things that need to happen here. My concern, actually, is that there will also be another misplaced attitude, which is rather than engaging in those kind of really difficult questions with regards to resourcing and integration, we're going to blame people who homeschool. Because one of the things that did happen in this case, of course, there was homeschooling. But if you look at the results of those children who are homeschooled, they're actually better than those who are state schooled. I mean, there was a 2017 systematic review which found that 78% of peer-reviewed studies found that children do better when they're homeschooled rather than when they're state schooled. And so clearly it's not the problem here, that the variable here is not homeschooling, which I think some people want to go for. We saw The Guardian go after homeschooling as a kind of result of it. No, it's not homeschooling. The issue here is the failure of the system to deal with a number of cases that exist and to particularly, due to misplaced political correctness, actually engage in the difficult question of cultural integration. Unless we deal with those questions, these things are going to continue happening.
This is the other debate. Well, there's a couple of debates that have been prompted by it. One, as you say, homeschooling. The other one, the laws around smacking. But Will Forster, MP for Woking, said that an inquest into Sara's death should examine if concerns over cultural sensitivities meant that teachers were afraid to question why she suddenly begun wearing a hijab. Her stepmom didn't wear a hijab. None of her siblings wore a hijab. I mean, questions should have been raised then. But are teachers, understandably these days, worried to say something in case they're accused of being racist?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are. And this is the problem, that political correctness or wokery or whatever we want to call it chills discussion, and it also chills the proper functioning of child safeguarding. And there is nothing more important than safeguarding. I mean, literally, that teachers, I'm the chair of the Board of Governors of a nursery school, and the thing that is often on our minds is there is nothing that we do that is more important than safeguarding. And if there is any kind of social attitude throughout the system that is undermining that or that is retarding that in any way, that needs to be fulsomely addressed. But unfortunately, there are far too many people in the country who don't feel self-confident enough to do that because the smear of being called a racist or of being called anti-Islamophobic or whatever it is, that trumps, in many cases, their concern, because they've got to think about their livelihoods, they've got to think about their reputations. Unless that's sorted, then the system cannot function and work. You can have all the safeguarding policies in the world that you like, but unless people are willing to implement those policies without favour, then it simply won't work.
Yeah. Peter Williams, Director of Family Education Trust, thank you very much for joining us to discuss an incredibly hard story. And obviously children, I mean, I think, you know, as Peter alluded to, you know, children are suffering at the hands of people who are worried, accused of being racist or accused of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Peter Williams, Director of Family Trust, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Now, our hospices are facing a financial crisis thanks to Rachel Reeves' budget. We'll be crossing live to one next. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The BBC has been branded jaw-achingly stupid, not by me, by the way, over its decision to cast black and ethnic minority actors in the historical drama of Wolf Hall. Now, is this a forward-thinking idea or nonsense? And are we rewriting history? Henry, I mean, the Tudors were real-life people. They were pretty much white.
Well, some of these shows depart so much from historical context anyway that maybe it doesn't make any difference. But I think just generally, we've got a problem in this country with portraying history in its correct sense. You can't change history. And I think it's about the motivation. If the motivation is to sort of, to some sort of, you know, to make a political point, then I think it's wrong.
What I find kind of tedious about people finding this instant jaw-droppingly stupid, Jesus was portrayed by somebody who's half Slovak and half Irish. Moses was portrayed in the Exodus by an Englishman. So, you know, same with Anne Boleyn, you know, was portrayed by Natalie Portman, who is Jewish. So if this is the one thing that's getting people angry, then there's something deeper within that rage, because I think Hollywood's been doing that, where people...
When you say something deeper, do you think there is a hidden racism and people are complaining about this?
Well, I think for some, maybe, yes. I can't speak for everybody because this news dropped today. I don't know why they are thinking that it's egregious. But there absolutely must be some underlying racism if this is the only one that you're upset about.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dawn Neeson. I'm not Martin Daubney. You might have spotted that, although Martin does have a jacket very similar. He very rarely wears it, only at weekends normally. And he's got matching shoes as well. In any case, this is GB News. We're broadcasting live from the centre of Westminster. Thank you very much for joining me on this very precious day before Christmas. Now, one of my best friends works in a hospice, and some of the stories she tells me about caring for people in that hospice are just really, really hard. And it's about to get harder. Several hospices have issued urgent funding appeals after warning about the impact that Rachel Reeves' national insurance hike, the effect it will have on them. Care provided by hospices is free to use, but unlike the NHS, they only receive a third of their funding from the government, relying on charity contributions for the rest. Basically, the private companies, so they are not got any get-out clauses now at all. We've been covering this story all day on GB News, rightly so, because it's not a subject that's talked about enough. It's not crisp and sexy, is it? But it should be. We should be caring about people in hospices. OK, now, GB News presenter Ellie Costello is at the Noah's Ark Children's Hospice in North London, and she joins us now with her report. Hi, Ellie. Good to see you. A brilliant job you're doing today. A very tough subject again. Tell us what's happening where you are now.
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Dawn, from Noah's Ark Children's Hospice, where, as you just alluded to, things are about to get very, very difficult for this sector. But until then, the show must go on for these children and creating magical moments for them, many of them with life-threatening and life-limiting conditions. But this hospice is all about creating the magic. You might be able to see Father Christmas in the background there. They're also enjoying an afternoon tea today, courtesy of the Dorchester Hotel in London. Luca Virgilio is the general manager there. Luca, this is such a special event that you have put on. What does it mean for the Dorchester to do this?
Well, for us, it's amazing to be able to bring some of the festive joys and memories to the children and families of Noah's Ark through afternoon tea. It just makes it very special. And the fact that every one of the 25 team members that are here today helping us to put all this up, donated their time, really is testament to how close this charity is to our hearts.
Wow, so you're all here, you're all volunteering, and to make this special experience just really authentic for the families and for the children, it's quite a logistical feat. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it was a bit of a feast. Of course, we brought everything from cutlery, silverware, crockery. Here we are, so even, you know, our cups, everything is brought from the Dorchester, some of our tables and chairs as well. So we had several vans. Last night we brought all of the, let's say, table crockeries, and today we came with our chefs with all the food that was freshly prepared early in the morning.
I think it's about time we looked at this food, Luca. And you can tell us what's on the menu.
I think we leave it to the experts, so there you are.
So, Adam, you're going to talk us through the sandwiches that are available today.
For the families today, we've got a little Rudolph reindeer tart, which is a little bit of fun, and the children's sandwiches. And then some 7 and white smoked salmon with Mary Rose, a little cucumber and pine for Christmas, roast turkey, a little truffled egg, and a little cheddar cheese and Christmas chutney.
Yeah, so for the desserts, we have scones baked in-house each day by our bakery team. Jams, clotted cream, children's afternoon tea, so some fun little bits there. And our pastries here, so milk chocolate, hazelnut tree, raspberry cheesecake, chestnut and coffee mousse, and a little cinnamon and pear bobo.
Gentlemen, it looks delicious, and I know the children are really enjoying it, as are their families, as are their carers and their siblings. Thank you so much for making this experience so special for them. Well, Dawn, let's speak now to Sophie Andrews, OBE, who's the CEO of Noah's Ark Children's Hospice. Sophie, such a pleasure to speak with you today. We have been alluding to how tough things are going to get in the sector as a result of national insurance contributions for employees. Can you tell us a bit more about how you're feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, for the children's hospice sector itself, it's £5 million potential extra income we've got to raise. For us at Noah's Ark, it's £100,000, so that's huge for us because we rely so much on voluntary donations. So to have to raise a further £100,000 just to cover that national insurance is, you know, it's a huge problem for us. It's worrying for us.
And as you say, you are reliant more now on voluntary funding. I hope you don't mind me saying that GB News viewers are already donating to Noah's Ark Children's Hospice. How can they do that if they'd like to help the work that you do for these children?
Go to our website. So our website is www.noahsark.org and /donate. But I know the information's coming up on the screen as well, but all donations are welcome.
And you are hoping for more support from the government. Wes Street and the Health Secretary said that he would lay out more support with government grants by Christmas. How are you feeling about that now? What would you like to hear?
Well, it's getting pretty tight, isn't it? Recess on Thursday. £25 million Children's Hospice grant across the Children's Hospice sector, and that's really vital for us. We need it. As I said before, we need to plan for the future. We really need to recruit more nurses, so we've got an urgent appeal for paediatric nurses to come and join us, but it's very difficult to plan ahead without the certainty of that funding going forward. So a critical few days for us, really.
Sophie Andrews, Obi, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you've done for these children and for organising such a special day. Luca, thank you so much for everything that you have done as well. And thank you, GB News viewers and listeners, for the donations that are already coming through thick and fast. We've been talking today about the motto here at Noah's Ark Children's Hospice, and it is making the most of every day. And for these families behind us, they don't know how many days they have left together. They don't know how many Christmases they have left together, but donating to a charity of this kind means that those moments can be truly, truly special. Back to you, Dawn.
Indeed. Ellie, thank you so much. What a wonderful report there from the Noah's Ark Children's Hospice in North London. And as you heard, it's noahsark.org you can donate to. And they are the most wonderful places. You think they're going to be the saddest places, but the families there and the children are some of the happiest little souls. So please do give generously. It is Christmas and they need your help. Unfortunately, Labour are determined to make it a very unhappy Christmas for them. Now, the Department of Health and Social Care have given a statement to us. They say, we are working to make sure everyone has access to high-end quality of life care. The choices the Chancellor made in the budget allowed us to invest another £26 billion in the NHS. OK. Unfortunately, hospices don't always come under the NHS, but that's neither here nor there, is it? Now, at GB News, we love to hear what you think, and our poll of the day is, should hospices be exempt from the Chancellor's national insurance hike? The final result will be announced later in this show, so don't want to miss that one. And for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, please do go to gbnews.com/poll. Now, there is still a lot more to come in between now and 4 o'clock, including me taking the mickey out of Martin as much as I possibly can. Oh, yeah, and the EU apparently wants Sir Keir Starmer to sign up to a huge Brexit betrayal. What a surprise, eh? More on that coming next. We'll see you very soon.
Good afternoon. These are your headlines at 3:30. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns.
This poor child was battered with great force again and again. Some of the injuries require special mention because they demonstrate the almost unbelievable torture to which Sara was subjected in the last weeks of her life. The medical experts identified a fracture in the hyoid bone in Sara's neck. This is a very unusual injury and was the result of very vigorous and energetic manual strangulation, quite possibly on more than one different occasion. Sara sustained a serious brain injury a few days before she died as a result of a blow to her head.
Meanwhile, the automatic right to home educate at-risk children could be scrapped under new legislation being introduced in Parliament today. The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill follows the case of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, whose family removed her from school before her murder last year. It would give local authorities new powers to ensure children in unsafe environments attend school and create a national register for children not in education. Charities warn the funding promised for family support services falls far short of what's needed. However, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says too many children have been failed by the state, calling the proposals a seminal moment for child protection.
The measures that I'm setting out today are about how we protect children and keep them safe, that we've got much clearer visibility of where children are and where parents make a request to home educate their children, where they take them out of school, that if we have safeguarding concerns or a child protection investigation is underway, we'll make sure that local councils are able to deny that request that parents have if they're concerned about the well-being of children. There's a range of other measures in the bill that we're setting out today about how we all need to work together to share information, whether that's police, health, education, to really work to protect children and to keep them safe. It's a landmark piece of legislation.
Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have been provided. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50-60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Still some issues in County Durham if your journey takes you on the A1M on the northbound side now from Boburn at 61 up to junction 62 at Carville, a lane shut as a vehicle undergoes a tyre change. It's causing delays. Now 3 out of 4 lanes are coned off on the eastbound M62, so queues for a collision from Brighouse towards Chain Bar, junction 25 to 26 eastbound is currently down to 1 lane. Stop start in Leicestershire and Loughborough on the northbound M1 just after junction 23. It follows an earlier breakdown there, but all the lanes are back open. And issues northbound in Oxford for the Woodstock Road of the A44 is currently shut from the A40 at the Wolvercut roundabout up towards the A34, the Pear Tree interchange. Long delays there at the scene of a collision. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, broadcasting live from Westminster in for the lovely Martin Daubney, who's off doing Christmassy stuff, which probably involves a pub. Him being a boy. Not rushing around doing the shopping, is he? You know what I'm talking about, girls. You know it. OK, now talking of Brussels sprouts, which I wasn't, but it's a good link. Brussels is taking the UK to the European Court of Justice over breaking terms of our Brexit deal. And with Downing Street refusing to rule out a role for the European Court, is this Labour's great Brexit betrayal? Boris Johnson seems to think so, as he's accused the Prime Minister of setting up a Westminster surrender squad made of 100 civil servants to return powers to the EU. OK, well, oh God almighty, make it stop. How many years have we been talking about this? Sir Keir Starmer is indeed set to meet the Estonian Prime Minister. What country is he in next? Who knows? And the other world leaders at the Joint Expeditionary Force Defence and Security Summit today. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is travelling with the PM and has the latest for us.
Well, we're here in Tallinn in Estonia. It's absolutely bitterly cold, and the Prime Minister is continuing on his whirlwind trip, the last, his team tell me, of the year. He's come in for a lot of criticism because you've probably noticed he's been on tons of trips this year. His poll rating has fallen through the floor. He's not, according to most of the British surveyed, doing a brilliant job at the moment, but his team are really keen to talk about why he's doing all this travelling. One of them told me yesterday that, frankly, he'd much rather be back in the UK seeing his children, but they said he's doing this to try to bring jobs and money to the UK. The government have said their number one mission is growth. They're not having much luck at getting it at the moment, so they're turning to partnerships with other countries. So we saw in Norway a whole host of engagements, a visit to a military base, a new green industrial partnership announced with Norway, working on things like carbon capture storage to bring us green energy. They see green tech as a big opportunity. Then on to the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit here in Estonia, talking about the shared challenges that Europe faces since Russia invaded Ukraine, and particularly as Donald Trump is going to be president soon, talking about defence spending. The UK has said they will get it to 2.5%. Estonia here, they say they're already there, and they say the other NATO countries need to follow suit. Now, we're expecting here an announcement on further investment. Estonian startup in defence technology opening an office in London. The PM will want to trumpet that, and more discussions about defence and about security, because it does feel like Europe is really rather different since that invasion of Ukraine. Nothing in terms of safety and security being taken for granted anymore.
OK, thank you very much, Catherine. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun or fancy doing some travelling like our Prime Minister, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it's going to be largely settled, lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend, just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Oh, quite fancy a few of those myself. Keir Starmer probably does too. Coming up next, Labour deny Waspi women a compensation. Chairwoman Angela Madden joins me next. And be prepared to be very angry. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan,
yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, like, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with, and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Thank you for your company on this very festive Tuesday afternoon. I hope you're actually getting time to put your feet up and have a bit of a rest. I'm Dawn Leeson, covering for Martin Daubney, who is probably, putting his feet up and having a rest. This is GB News, broadcasting live from Westminster for you. Now, love this story. Not. Labour has ruled out compensation for almost 4 million women who claim they lost thousands of pounds because of changes to the state pension age, ignoring an official payout recommendation. The party had previously promised to right the historic wrongs while in opposition, but the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Liz Kendall, confirmed today that no compensation will be paid. Let's have a listen at what she had to say in the Commons earlier.
Mr. Speaker, as I have said, we haven't taken this decision lightly, but we believe it is the right decision because the great majority of women knew the state pension age was increasing, sending letters earlier wouldn't have made a difference for most, and the proposed compensation scheme isn't fair or value for taxpayers' money. I know there are women born in the 1950s who want and deserve a better life. They have worked hard in paid jobs and in bringing up their families. Many are struggling financially with the cost of living and fewer savings to fall back on, and they worry about their health and how their children and grandchildren will get on. To those women I say, this government will protect the pensions triple lock, so your state pension will increase by up to £1,900 a year by the end of this Parliament.
OK, hold on a minute. What is it with this government, right, and pensioners? Certainly pensioners, you know, the Waspi women. I did a documentary on this subject a good few years ago when this first started happening and women started getting in contact with the magazine and newspapers I was working on at the time, saying, this is not fair. And it's a story about pensions, but this is real people's lives we're talking about here. There were women that were expecting to get their pensions when they reached a certain age, and suddenly that disappeared without any warning, and suddenly they had to wait another 2 years. They'd planned financially for that. You know, women do these things. We plan, don't we? They'd planned financially for that. Many of these women were left in poverty. I'm not messing around here, in actual poverty. And nobody seems to care. And this is a brilliant message. I just want to read this message out at gbnews.com/yoursay, by the way. Please do keep in touch. Peter Wilson, you've got in touch on this story. So you say 35 million for Ukraine, 55 million for Syria, nothing for the UK Waspi women. Now, many of the women in this situation are obviously, they are very elderly. Many have died without getting any justice on this. And as for Labour saying that, yes, we are looking after pensioners, yeah, of course you are. I mean, the winter fuel payment, remember? That 245-page questionnaire you have to fill in, and even I can't do it. I downloaded it. I keep telling this from my mum. I downloaded this questionnaire. I lost the will to live, which is probably the point, by the way, halfway through. And good luck if you are able to fill in your pension or credit allowance claim form. You're not likely to get the money until the spring. So the fact that they are saying they are looking after pensioners is, I'm sorry, it's like they're looking after farmers. And heaven help you if you are a female pensioning farmer of a certain age or one of the Waspi women. You are really in trouble, aren't you? In any case, calm down, Dom. Earlier, the Prime Minister was asked about helping the Waspi women, and here's what he had to say.
I do understand their concerns. The Ombudsman's findings were clear in relation to the maladministration, but also clear about the lack of direct financial injustice as the Ombudsman saw it, and that's why we've taken the decision that we've taken. But I do understand, of course, the concern of the Waspi women, but also, of course, I have to take into account whether it's right at the moment to impose further burden on the taxpayer, which is what it would be. So, of course, I acknowledge their concern, but we're following the findings of the Ombudsman, and it is a question of balancing those concerns with the taxpayers' obligations, which are already very high, and that finding of the Ombudsman.
I understand, says Keir Starmer. I understand. Sorry, Sir Keir Starmer, I don't believe you do understand. Listen to this. If you're watching, Keir, you're away, aren't you? You're not in the country. This is from Mel. Thanks for getting in touch, Mel. gbnews.com/yoursay, by the way. Mel says, my wife, like many, has lost out to the tune of £48,000 because of the pension changes. This government has decided it's not value for money to abide by an independent ombudsman decision to award just a £3,000 compensation. What is the point of having that independent I can't even say the word, that independent adjudicator there? What is the point? Lots of you getting in touch about this story, and it's really, really unfair. And as I said, women are suffering, and many women have died without getting any compensation for this. So please do get in touch, gbnews.com/yoursay on this story. It's linked to the winter fuel payment, indeed. You know, and these women were taxpayers, by the way. You know, Keir Starmer saying, I'm doing this for the taxpayers. These women pay taxes most of their lives. These are working women we're talking about. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch already with all the thoughts on the big stories of the day. And as I keep saying, gbnews.com/yoursay. Actually, no, we have had a guest come in. Brilliant. I'm so glad to talk to her. This is Chair of Women Against State Pension Inequality, Angela Madden. Angela, where are you, my lovely? Hope you are there. Angela. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've heard me ranting and raving about this story. Honestly, I get so angry. Angela, just tell me what's happened today and how you feel about it.
Bitterly disappointed. I think we can all say we expected more from a Labour government after their years of support in opposition. And it's just amazing that they can cherry pick their own watchdogs' recommendations and say, I agree with this bit, but I don't agree with that bit. And come up with new evidence seemingly outside of the evidence that was given to the ombudsman by the Department of Work and Pensions, who were supposed to fully comply with the ombudsman's inquiry. So it's stunning, really, absolutely shocking.
And what does it mean? I mean, I did, as I said, I did a documentary on this a good few years ago now, when women started talking about it, and many of the ladies I talked to then are sadly no longer with us. I mean, you must have heard some horrible stories about how women have been suffering because of this financially.
Yes. And this is just another slap in the face, really, isn't it? For the same women who suffered from 2 increases to their state pension age. It's just, we clearly are disposable as far as this government's concerned.
And what do you make of what you've heard Keir Starmer say today about it? He understands, but he has to do the right thing by the taxpayers. Many of the women we're talking about are taxpayers. They pay taxes all their lives.
I'm a taxpayer, and I've paid taxes all my life. I was foolish enough to trust in government, like many of my colleagues, my peers. We trusted their ombudsman to be the fair broker, to listen to all the evidence from the women and all the evidence from the DWP, and he did. And he knew the Department of Work and Pensions would never admit to doing things wrong or pay us compensation for that wrongdoing. And he's been proved right. So not only has she betrayed us today, Liz Kendall, but she's also betrayed her colleagues in Parliament, because the Ombudsman actually laid this report before Parliament because they knew that the DWP would do nothing about it. And from what I heard in the debate at lunchtime, the parliamentarians, the MPs themselves are quite cross, and they would like to see something done. Now, we have also raised a parliamentary petition that has passed the ceiling of 100,000 votes, and that should prompt a debate in Parliament. So let's see if that gets done.
OK, Angela, thank you very much for joining us. Angela Madden, Chairwoman Against State Pension Inequality, and good luck. Carry on fighting, because someone's got to. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Still to come, Elon Musk, Nigel Farage, Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. What's happening there, then? What does it mean for us? I'm Daubney, and this is GB News, and you'll find out very soon if you come back after this short weather break with Alex Burkle.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50-60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across the southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Issues in Kinross on the M90 this afternoon. Part blocked both ways between Junction 6 and the Crooked Devon at Junction 5. There's debris on the road there. The Woodside Viaduct to the M8 roadworks continue. On that eastbound side, there's a breakdown as well, so queues around 18 for Charing Cross. Eastbound M62 still down to a single lane. Brighouse to Chain Bar, 25 to 26. A collision means lanes 2, 3 and 4 are blocked. And queues in Oxford still this afternoon. The Woodstock Road northbound, the A44 closed from the A40 at the Wolvercut roundabout up to the Pear Tree interchange for the A34. Long queues at the scene of a collision. And in Devon, the southbound M5, the exit slip coming off at Columpton 28 closed as a lorry has a tyre change. That's causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the 17th of December, and you're not ready either. And I had to look at the date because I can't believe it either. The 17th of December. Oh, my Lord. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, but the sharp-eyed amongst you might recognise me as Dawn Neeson. Not Martin. Similar, I know, if you blow your eyes. We are broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. Now, Nigel Farage has met Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence amid speculation the billionaire will make a multi-million-pound donation to Reform UK. Just how likely is it? We're bringing the latest on that breaking story. And is this the day Brexit dies? Part 356. Less than 10 years after the vote to leave, Britain could once again be under the control of the European Court of Justice. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset relations with the EU, but will he just bow down to Brussels again? And is this another blow for Sir Keir Starmer? The new Mauritius Prime Minister says the Chagos Islands deal struck by our Prime Minister isn't good enough and wants to reopen talks. Sir Keir Starmer resists calls to officially declare China a threat to national security in the wake of the unmasking of an alleged Chinese spy. I'll be joined by a former diplomat who says the PM even has got it wrong. And the horror story of Sara Sharif's father and stepmother. They have been sentenced to life in prison for the 10-year-old's appalling murder. The judge, who got emotional, said Sara suffered a campaign of torture and that none of the defendants had shown a shred of remorse. But despite Martin's name flashing up on the screen, it's not about him today, it's not about me, it's all about you. So send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Now, OK, it's time for... Oh, yeah, should we get some headlines? Here's Sophia Wensler with them for you.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns.
This poor child was battered with great force again and again. Some of the injuries require special mention because they demonstrate the almost unbelievable torture to which Sara was subjected in the last weeks of her life. The medical experts identified a fracture in the hyoid bone in Sara's neck. This is a very unusual injury and was the result of very vigorous and energetic manual strangulation, quite possibly on more than one different occasion. Sara sustained a serious brain injury a few days before she died as a result of a blow to her head.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Cairo for Gaza's ceasefire talks. That's according to Reuters news agency. Uncertainty is surrounding Netanyahu's whereabouts, but it's understood a deal is expected to be signed in the coming days. Meanwhile, Hamas said that a ceasefire deal is possible, but only if Israel didn't set new conditions. Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have been provided. In other news, the government has rejected calls for compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age. The Work and Pension Secretary says paying a flat rate to all women born in the 1950s would cost taxpayers more than £10 billion and wouldn't be fair. Women Against State Pension Inequality, also known as Waspi, say they weren't properly informed about the changes. While Liz Kendall admitted there was a delay in notifying women, she insisted most were aware of the pension age rise. She has now confirmed there will be no compensation scheme despite calls for one.
To understand their concerns, the Ombudsman's findings were clear in relation to the maladministration, but also clear about the lack of direct financial injustice as the Ombudsman saw it, and that's why we've taken the decision that we've taken. But I do understand, of course, the concern of the Waspi women, but also, of course, I have to take into account whether it's right at the moment to impose further burden on the taxpayer, which is what it would be. So, of course, I acknowledge their concern, but we're following the findings of the Ombudsman, and it is a question of balancing those concerns with the taxpayers' obligations, which are already very high, and that finding of the Ombudsman.
Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer speaking there. Now, a man who received child abuse images from convicted paedophile Alex Williams, the same individual who shared material with BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, has been spared jail. 25-year-old Jack Davies pleaded guilty to possession of indecent images of children and Class A drugs. His defence argued that a suspended sentence given to Hugh Edwards should also apply in his case. Davies has also been ordered to attend rehabilitation and remain on the sex offenders register for 10 years. Stop creating trouble, that's China's message to the UK as tensions flare over spying allegations. Beijing has slammed what it called anti-China clamours from British MPs, accusing them of spreading lies and damaging relations. It comes after Yang Tengbo, alleged to be a Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew, was banned from the UK. MPs are now pushing for stricter controls on foreign influence, while the government insists it's stepping up security. The row threatens to derail recent progress, including Keir Starmer's landmark meeting with President Xi last month. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. OK, now, Nigel Farage and his party treasurer have met with Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. It's the first time since rumours surfaced of a multi-million-pound donation from the tech tycoon. There's a picture there, you can see it. Very dapper indeed. Meanwhile, less than 10 years after the vote to leave Britain, Britain could once again be under the control of the European Court of Justice. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset relations with the EU. But will he just bow down to Brussels again? Well, let's speak to someone who's an expert on all of this, Conservative Member of Parliament for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois. Mark, thank you very much for coming in and joining me today.
My pleasure.
Where to start? Let's start in America, shall we? Because it's slightly more insane than we are over here at the moment. So we've just seen pictures there of Elon Musk, Donald Trump, yes. Will he donate money to reform? And what difference will that make to British politics?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to have Elon over here and ask him yourself.
Go on, pretend you're Elon. Go on, pretend you got that money.
Well,
obviously you wouldn't donate it to reform.
Probably not, no. But, I mean, he's always taken an interest in British politics. So I think he is the one who came up with two-tier Keir. From memory.
He did, yeah, absolutely. And it's spawned a whole spin-off there.
After the Southport riots. So he's obviously taken an interest in that. Whether that would stretch to actually making a significant donation to a UK political party, you know, only he can answer, really.
Would the Conservatives be worried if he did?
Well, I mean, you know, we are, now that Kemi is our leader, as I understand it, in the lot, you know, we're beginning to get donors coming back on board. So I think we can raise a few bob of our own. I do think, though, that, you know, Labour's sort of going to war with Musk on this sort of, you know, these leaked papers about we're going to take him down on Twitter, which is challenging as he happens to own it. You know, you could argue that for them, going to war with the richest man in the world is challenging.
Well, this is the richest man in the world. They didn't invite to the business summit they had, did they? I mean, sort of...
Again, that is a decision for the Labour Party. But I mean, look, if you look at Sir Keir Starmer's personal ratings, they are. I mean, I know a friend who's in the submarine world, and he said Starmer's approval ratings are approaching crush depth. And you know, to have nosedive like this within 5 months of becoming Prime Minister is actually quite extraordinary.
It takes some doing.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the Brexit then. You know, Brussels is taking the UK to the European Court of Justice for breaking terms of the Brexit deal. Is Keir Starmer going to take us back into the EU?
I believe if he could, he would. I remember sitting in the House of Commons week after week, watching him calling for a second referendum because he couldn't abide the results of the first one. And I believe that this talk of a reset is code.
What does that mean? What does reset mean?
It's a euphemism for basically trying to take us back in via another name.
I believe that's what...
I absolutely do. You know, to try and give you, your viewers some insight into this, we've just been joined by Chopper. He'll remember all of this very well. Night after night, I mean, for over 2 years, we had Starmer in the Commons conspiring with people across all parties to try and keep us in the EU at almost any price. He remains a Remainer at heart. He'll always be an ardent Remainer. And this talk of a reset, they're already talking about surrendering some of our fishing rights. They're talking about weakening on free movement. I believe they wouldn't dare try and do this all in one go. They'll play grandmother's footsteps and they'll try and take us back in. They'll try and take us back in step by step by step by step, a bit like boiling a frog. Yeah, but I absolutely, ardently believe Starmer will try and take us back into the EU if he thinks he can get away with it.
And so, I mean, a lot of our viewers, gbnews.com/your say, by the way, are saying, certainly the Waspi women thing, don't believe a word Keir Starmer says. I mean, Cassandra said, never hear Keir state in radio interview in 2022 with regard to the Waspi women, there was a real injustice. It's a long line of U-turns, broken promises and lies. So do you think Brexit will be, we are not going back to the EU, that's just another U-turn lie?
I can see Chopper's keen to get in, but I mean, look, we had a referendum, right? 17.4 million people voted to leave. It's the biggest proposition ever voted for in British politics. Starmer got less than 10 million votes in the general election. 17.5 million people voted to leave the EU. He cannot overturn that mandate, but he's definitely going to try.
Do you think that will be the end of Labour if he does do that?
I think there have already been a number of betrayals. I mean, look at the winter fuel allowance. That wasn't in their manifesto. They didn't have a mandate for that. Reeves said in the end of May, a week into the general election, all their funds were all their plans, remember this, were fully costed and fully funded. She said a few minutes later, no need to raise taxes. Budget puts them up by 40 billion.
It's not going to be touched.
Yeah, so I think they've already got, in all seriousness, a massive sort of credibility, honesty problem with the British electorate. If they try to renege on Brexit, that would just about do it for them.
Yeah, indeed. OK, seeing as you've pointed him out several times now, and we can't ignore... I'm doing my best to ignore him. Christopher Hope is in the studio. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of everything?
Well, I've been to a briefing with the PM's...
Where do you even want to start? Go on, start. Where you been?
Well, I've been with the PM spokesman, which I was so keen to help out with your conversation, what they're saying on these big issues of the day, the Chagos Islands, the Elon Musk possible donation and the Waspi women. To go through them in that order briefly, the Chagos Islands, the Mauritius PM, from what you told MPs in Mauritius, that they had been exchanged the letter looking at the detail now of this deal to hand over sovereignty for 100 years. They'll keep it for 100 years. And after that goes back to Mauritius of the Diego Garcia base and the wider Chagos archipelago. They are saying that they're not going to get into their private discussions with this government. They're saying that they're engaging with details of the deal. That's reflected in letters between the two. So they want to progress this agreement. They believe it's in the interest of both the UK and of course Mauritius and of course the Chagos Islands. That protects the long-term security of the base. Mark will have his own debate about that.
When you're ready, I'd like to come back on that.
He does keep mentioning it.
And just very, very briefly about the issue of Elon Musk and this may be a donation reported $100 million. We see breaking this lunchtime, Nigel Farage has been there with his new treasurer, Nick Candy.
You see the pictures there?
That's right. The government...
Sorry, Elon Musk, what is that pose about?
They are looking at tightening up they are looking at tightening up rules on foreigners' involvement in our democracy, but they won't cap donations. So I can just imagine where this might be going. There might be some new change in the law to try and stop someone who's South African-born, living in America through a UK operation. It could be called X. There's all sorts of ways of doing it, and it's all there laid out in clear terms. But they won't be capping any donations, and of course they won't comment on private talks that may or may not be having with Elon Musk. And just finally on the Waspi women, yes, there are concerns, of course, from viewers and listeners to GB News. The government says that the row is about whether people were warned in advance for an 18-month period before the DWP warned women born in the 50s they were going to have to work more for their pension. 90% of people were aware of the delay, so the government is standing by this decision not to reward them. But there are millions of people out there watching and listening to GB News who are very, very cross.
On Waspi Women, ever so quickly, I remember that general election campaign. I was a candidate in it, and Labour were giving lots of nods and winks to the Waspi women. All the body language was, you put us in government, you'll be all right. So I can well understand why many of them will be absolutely furious. I read the Ombudsman's report. He said there was a case to answer. He outlined 5 different options for compensation. He sort of leant towards option 4. In the end, they've been given nothing. You can understand why they're up the wall. On Chagos, look, I think we caught the government fibbing here. I've got a reply from the Foreign Office this morning to a written question, quote, "The new Mauritian Prime Minister has since written to the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, to reaffirm his commitment to concluding the deal," right? Now, Bloomberg then report a couple of hours ago, and this is what Chopper was talking about, they've published quotes from the Mauritian PM saying the deal, I quote, would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. So explain that dichotomy. So it looks as if this thing is collapsing. Trump has already made it pretty obvious he does not support it. So we negotiated a deal with a government in Mauritius that has changed, and with the support of an American president who's got about a month left to go, and the incoming president very clearly doesn't support this. So it looks as if the whole thing is beginning to
it's worth
implode.
looking at the exact language, Dawn, of what the Mauritius PM told their parliament. He said that Mauritius made clear during the talks with the UK is still willing to conclude an agreement with the UK, but the draft agreement shown to them after the election is one which, in our view, would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect from such an agreement. Therefore, Mauritius submitted counter-proposals to the UK so that agreement can be concluded based on that. And the UK's response to those proposals has been received yesterday afternoon, has now been looked at. That is at odds with your letter, because it looks like there's talks about detail here.
Well, it has written to the Prime Minister, reaffirm his commitment to concluding the deal.
So
well,
therefore,
no, this isn't just sophistry. So they've said we need to renegotiate.
So is the deal now reopened? It looks like it.
Well,
maybe.
I think we can agree that it is. Whereas the government have been trying to tell us all for weeks this was effectively all done. You know, nothing to see here. Move along, please. And by the way, you've got a new president of the United States, and that base. And I say this as the Shadow Armed Forces Minister, is absolutely strategically vital to the defence of the West. That runway is arguably one of the most important runways in the world, literally, and the Americans absolutely don't want to give it up, and they don't want any risk.
Submarines are based there.
Yeah, and they don't want any risk that the Chinese will have any say over it. And by the way, it now emerges, we tabled lots of questions on this, that Mauritius is part of a Pan-African non-nuclear proliferation treaty. So that raises an issue about whether you could base any nuclear weapons at Diego Garcia, which is vital to the deterrence of China. So, in other words, the more you look at this, the more it begins to unravel.
Well, on that very point, Dawn, Number 10 say it is not unravelling. They are clear.
Right,
they're going to get a deal. They are concluding the detail of a deal which will not unravel. Number 10 says, to be quite clear.
And well, let's get Donald Trump on here and see what he says.
Well, exactly.
He's always asked. There's a standing invitation for Donald Trump.
Just very quickly, though, gentlemen, how does considering he loves his globe-trotting on being on the world stage? How does it make Mark come to you? How does it make Keir Starmer look on the world stage? The fact that this is unravelling, it's quite clearly there was no impact assessment done on this one.
No,
like anything else.
Well, I can't remember who came up with "not here, Keir," but you know he's missed PM's cues quite a bit. He does seem to like travelling quite a lot. And
he's missed 2 of them. Only 2 PM cues.
Well, and he's put his authority behind this deal. We've accused him of surrendering British sovereign territory. We believe he is. And now, to come back to your earlier point, it looks like he wants to surrender to the EU as well. So surrender Starmer is not having a good run, is he?
They deny they're surrendering. They say there's no return. Let me finish what they are saying. Is there's no return to the customs union, single market, or freedom of movement. There are no plans on 18 to 30-year-olds, which suggests they might look at that, and fishing, no comment. So there are elements of the deal, but the sovereignty issue, which you care about as a chairman of the European Research Group of Tory MPs, is safe under
Chopper, in the immortal words of Mandy Rice-Davies, well, they would say that, wouldn't they?
Oh, I love that. And we'll leave it on that one. Perfect. Thank you very much, Marc-Francois and Christopher Hope. Thank you very much for joining me on that one. OK, well, should we cheer you up now, eh? Why not? Let's not talk politics, let's talk money. Oh, God, they might be linked. Anyway, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to become our biggest ever winner with an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Rachel Reeves can't get hold of this one, girls. Here's all the details you need to make it yours. Have a go.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year. Luck.
Good luck indeed, especially if you're a Waspi woman who happens to be a farmer. That might come in handy. OK, it's not just Prince Andrew who befriended a suspected Chinese spy. So did journalist Sean Raymond. I'll be speaking to him next. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny the Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode. One James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink, let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and, you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, It happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for your company on this festive Tuesday afternoon. It is indeed, I have to keep looking. I know, this is 17th of December. I know I'm not ready either. Don't panic, anybody. Panic! Anyways, I'm Dawn Neeson. I'm standing in for Martin Daubney, who is probably off doing something very fun and festive. Well, I wonder, probably sitting in a pub somewhere. In any case, should we talk about China? Prince Andrew isn't the only person to have befriended a suspected Chinese spy. So did journalist Sean Raymond. And it was so serious that MI5 even got involved. So is Sir Keir Starmer wrong to resist calls to declare China a threat to national security? Let's speak to Sean now. He's a defence journalist and co-host of the Security Podcast. Sean, hello. Thank you very much for joining us. OK, well, this is a fine mess that the government and Andrew are in. But tell me what happened to you.
Well, it was quite a while ago now, about 10 years ago, I guess, maybe 12 years ago. And I was... sorry, the delivery driver is banging on the window. I was...
It's Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. I was keen to go to China, and now the dogs have kicked off. I was keen to go to China and basically report on what the Chinese armed forces were doing. It was in that period when relations with the UK and China were pretty good. I think they were sort of calling it the golden era. And I had this sort of a plan, it was always going to be a 1% chance of coming off, to go to China, report on their armed forces and see if I could get in and go to their barracks, almost like do a military invade. So there were no rules on how you do this. So I phoned up the Chinese embassy, asked if I could speak to their defense attaché, and we arranged to meet for lunch. And we had a series of lunches. I have to say they were excruciatingly boring because his English was terrible and I know zero Chinese. So most of the time, we were walking away maybe with 30% of what we actually knew each other was talking about. It then culminated, this went on for about 6 months, and I would phone him up on a weekly basis saying, where's my visa, where's my visa? And he would say, it's coming, it's coming. And then we had a lunch, some sort of celebration at a big house in Hampstead, which was owned by the Chinese embassy. There were all sorts of dignitaries there, people from the British government, from the Ministry of Defence, from the RAF, people in uniform, and I was there. I had been invited by Lou, who was my contact at the embassy, and I said hello to him, and he was really nervous, really sort of fidgety, and made it clear that he didn't want to talk to me, which, I was a bit surprised at, just thought maybe he's under a bit of pressure because, his boss was there. Anyway, I stayed there for a couple of hours, went home. Next day, I got a call from MI5. At that point, I was the defence and security correspondent of The Telegraph, and we had lots of communication with MI5. They had people who would deal with the press. They were sort of press officers, not press officers, they were MI5 officers who dealt with the press. And we had a relationship where we would meet for lunch, sort of every 2 or 3 months. And he called me up and said, any chance we could meet for lunch later in the week? And by the way, I'm bringing someone with me who I just thought was a new member of the team. Anyway, we met for lunch, got into the restaurant, sat down, and almost as I sat down, he said to me, you met someone at the Chinese embassy yesterday at a function, and that person you met was an intelligence officer. He's a spy. We'd like to know what you've been talking to him about. And my attitude was, initially, whoa, hang on, what's going on here? I'm getting up and I'm off. I was intrigued, so I said, well, how do you know this? And they pretty much refused to tell me how they knew, but I'm guessing it was because of this function. And then they sort of asked, what was he talking about? What did he want to know? And I said, what we were talking about? Mainly about education. He was telling me that he told me far more about himself than I ever gave him about myself. He told me that he was married to a doctor, that she couldn't work in this country because she didn't have the right qualifications. He had an 8-year-old son who he'd give maths to do every night until about 9 o'clock in the evening, and thought English schools weren't hard enough on our kids, that the education system, he thought wasn't that good. So we had a conversation about schools. Conversation about independent schools. My kids are at a prep school, and I was sort of whinging on about how much it was costing me. And so I explained all this to MI5, and they said, did he ask you for your contacts? And I said, no. And even if he did, there's no way, I would have given them to him. And even if I had, they would, have not spoken to him. They would have just put the phone down. But they sort of explained that what China was doing, and this, as I say, 10 to 12 years ago, was trying to hoover up as much information as they can. And they had this sort of system where they would cast their net very wide and see what they could catch. And I guess that's what they felt he was trying to do to me. But I was always less than convinced by that, really.
When they first said that, he was a spy, was your reaction like, don't be silly, it's just someone I've been talking to help get a visa? I mean, it's not every day you get up, someone coming up and say, well, you were just talking to a spy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was my first reaction. And also having got to know Lou, he just was about, he looked like a librarian, I mean, no disrespect, but, you get the picture, he was like a very ordinary, small guy wearing ill-fitting suits,
Sean, sorry, we are running out of time. Just very, very quickly. So are you surprised that people like Prince Andrew can be taken in by an alleged, still don't know if but an alleged spy like this?
Well, yeah, I guess I was as surprised as anyone else when I saw the news that he'd been tapped up by a Chinese agent. Yeah. So yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it?
It was indeed, absolutely. That's Sean Raymond, defence journalist and co-host of Security Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, I love this bit, favourite bit. During Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Have a look at this one.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 17.
Hello, I'm Reverend Mike Milmine and welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. Many of our favourite stories begin like this. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away. But the Christmas story begins very differently. St Luke's account starts like this. In the reign of Caesar Augustus, while Quirinius was governor of Syria, real people, real dates, the Christmas story is anchored in human history. It's tempting to cast the Christmas story as a lesson-filled fable full of moral nuggets that we can extract in the way that we do with a fairy tale. But the Christmas story won't allow itself to be read in that way. The truth and endurance of the Christmas story lies in the fact that the events really did happen. The mere fact that it's 2024 is testimony to that, the decisive moment in which God breaks into human history and nothing will ever be the same again.
Love those. OK, but it's time for the news headlines with Sophia Wensler. Here she is.
Dawn, thank you. These are your headlines at 4:34. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded, and had a plastic bag put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Cairo for Gaza ceasefire talks. That's according to Reuters news agency. Uncertainty is surrounding Netanyahu's whereabouts, but it's understood a deal is expected to be signed in the coming days. Meanwhile, Hamas said that a ceasefire deal is possible, but only if Israel didn't set new conditions. It's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal, struck by Sir Keir Starmer, isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have been provided. In other news, a man who received child abuse images from convicted paedophile Alex Williams, the same individual who shared material with BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, has been spared jail. 25-year-old Jack Davies pleaded guilty to possession of indecent images of children and Class A drugs. His defence argued that a suspended sentence given to Hugh Edwards should also apply to his case. Davies has also been ordered to attend rehabilitation and remain on the sex offenders register for 10 years. And a good Christmas deed gone wrong, as radio DJ Jordan North was rescued from the River Thames after trying to save a struggling dog from the water. The 34-year-old got into the water near the Hammersmith Bridge after spotting the Labrador, but said he soon became panicky. Fortunately, crew from the RNLI, who were out on an exercise at the time, were flagged down by members of the public and reached North and the dog he rescued in 3 minutes. Speaking while presenting his Capital Breakfast show, North said a big thank you and a massive shout-out to RNLI Chiswick. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2713 and €1.2104. The price of gold is £2,076.62 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 at 8,211 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50-60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across the southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello again, I'm Jules Buckley. Good afternoon. The M8 in the eastbound roadworks just by the Woodside Viaduct, Charing Cross at 18 still queuing. Following an earlier breakdown, all lanes have reopened in the last 10 minutes though. A vehicle undergoing a tyre change. This is the northbound A1M, so a lane shut. Pretty slow going from Boburn up to Carvale Junction 61 up to 62. Now 3 lanes out of 4 on the eastbound M62 are still coned off. That's Brighouse to Chain Bar, Junction 25 to 26, so just 1 lane open. It's at the scene now of a collision, naturally still causing heavy traffic. And away from Oxford, the Woodstock Road northbound, the A44, that remains shut from the Wolvercut roundabout, so off the A40 up to the A34, the Pear Tree interchange. Long queues back on towards the A40 in particular due to a collision.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson. In for Martin Daubney, who is off doing Christmassy stuff on this very festive Tuesday, the 17th of December. And you're not ready, are you? But I don't want you to go and get ready yet. I want you to keep me company until 6 o'clock tonight. We are GB News and we're broadcasting live from Westminster. Now, the horrible story of the day, but I want to talk about it because it is important, especially to women and girls. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for her murder after subjecting her to years of horrific suffering. Now, we've discussed it. We spoke to Charlie Peters. We carried the judgment live. I've covered court cases for many, many years as a journalist. I've never heard a judge be quite as emotional as that judge sentencing those two, well, hideous people for what they did to that 10-year-old girl. So let's bring in Khadija Khan now, who has said that women and children are being murdered behind closed doors in some conservative cultures in Britain. Khadija, thank you so much for coming to join me. Always a pleasure to talk to you. What do you make of the case of Sara?
It's a tragic case, and I myself feel very much emotional whenever I have to talk about her case and the miseries she endured over the years. The thing is, the Sara's case was reported to the authorities since the time of her birth, and her father had been reported to the concerned authority and being accused of domestic violence many times in the past. The school reported to the social services months before her murder about the bruises on her face, and the social services, they dropped the file a few days later. This is a matter which is not only a matter of negligence, it is a matter of criminal negligence. Now, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has rightly said that there are questions to be answered. I wonder what questions he might be thinking about, because it is true that she was removed from the school to be home educated. However, we should not forget that pulling out her from the school was the final act that led to the violent campaign that claimed her life. She endured unspeakable horrors while she was still attending the school, and the bruises and the injuries on her face and bodies, they were staring in the eyes and in the faces of the school, social worker, and the concerned authorities. And nobody helped her. Those people who should have protected her, they turned a blind eye to her plight. Apparently, there have been fears to question many things, such as why she started wearing hijab suddenly, why she is being beaten up in her, when she's coming to school, and there are lame excuses that cannot be taken as a justification, and rule out the rest of the fears related to her injuries and wounds. So my concern is that there has been cultural relativism, playing out in this case and in many other cases, which only make headlines when the girls and women, they suffered unspeakable horrors at the hand of their family. And in some cases, there is bullying and intimidation from the member of the community as well. So there has been a reluctance on the part of the authorities. They don't want to confront. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, do you think that there is that cultural sensitivities meant that teachers were afraid to question, as you pointed out, why Sara started wearing the hijab when even her stepmom didn't wear the hijab? So it was a very unusual happening. But do you think people are so frightened, it's certainly in some communities, to question what's actually going on?
The thing is, the practice of hijab is very much controversial within the Muslim communities. There have been many discussions about it. For children, it is not required, even in the religious discourse. It is not at all required for the children. Yet, it is a norm in the UK. I see so many little girls wearing hijab, walking down the street every morning, and that hurts me because I know, first of all, it is not required by the religion, so people cannot claim it to be a religious freedom or religious right. Second, this is a means of sexualizing children, treating them as women. And when they treat them as women, then of course the tactics they use to control women, to intimidate women, they also apply them on children.
Khadija, unfortunately, we are running out of time. Thank you so much for joining me, always talking so much sense, and bravely, I might add. Khadija gets a lot of stick for saying the things she says, talking openly about what it's like to be a woman in that community. OK, now, moving on, if you are in search of some winter sun, and who isn't? Where is Martin Daubney, by the way? Here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it is going to be largely settled. Lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend. Just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Ooh, travelling around the world, where would you like to go? Yes, Keir Starmer. He's quite good at this, isn't he? More like Jet Set Starmer these days. He's flown a whopping 75,000 miles since becoming PM. I'm Dawn Neeson on GB News, Britain's news channel, and there's more on Starmer's Jet Set lifestyle coming up very soon.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's about Generation Z spending 6 hours a day online. Generation Z, which age group is that?
16 to 24.
OK, great.
So, now, this could explain why there's 1 million young people aged between 16 and 24.
100%.
Not working.
Work.
Yeah.
And I did a TV show and we're talking about, and the lefty person I was on with was making excuses for the fact that we've got 9 million people unemployed. And this woman, this mum, rang in and she was hilarious. And I thought she was going to have a go at me. She said, Carol Malone. I thought, here we go, another one. And she goes, you are absolutely right. She said, I've just thrown my son out of the house, who's 24. She said, my husband and I, she said, we worked all our lives, 2 jobs, to get him to college, to get him to a private school.
Yeah.
She said he hasn't worked a day.
No.
And his attitude was, why should I? And you think, and she said he spends all day online.
On his phone.
All he's
because
doing.
we would have gone to get a job because we were bored. And the trouble is, Jonathan, the younger generation are never, ever bored because the algorithms keep them stimulated.
Well, the dopamine hits keep coming. I think it's actually a problem for all of us. Yeah. You know, now for anyone, if you just have a moment to yourself, a lot of people of all ages, what do we reach for? We reach for our phones, particularly for those. Obviously, if we're with a friend, we'll talk to them.
Your age group, you're not talking about...
I know that I've spoken to a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who also will just, you know, if they have a free month on the tube or whatever, they'll just look at their phone and read. And it's actually terrifying because on the iPhone every Monday it tells you how much time you spent on your phone the previous week, and it's
How much for you?
On average per day?
Fair few hours. I mean, a lot of that will be work.
What's the ballpark? Oh, more than 5?
Occasionally 5. Yeah.
Well, you've better things to do. Spending 6 hours a day.
Do you never read a book? Well, that'll be at night time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson for Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. And I could tell you what I've been talking about during the break, but then I would probably be sacked. Actually, I definitely would be sacked. But I've been teaching the young producer a new phrase from back in the day, which you can't say now, can't say that. Any case. So Keir Starmer, or should I say Jet Set Starmer, has flown a whopping 75,000 miles, visiting a total of 15 countries in an attempt to put Britain back on the world stage. Well, we can now speak with Associate Director for Polling at More in Common, Ed Hodgson. Ed, thank you very much for joining me. Ed, I mean, I'm sure all the Waspi women and the farmers and the pensioners freezing in their homes would love to be jetting off somewhere exotic at the moment as well. Why is he never here?
Yeah, look, it's something that's cut through sort of unusually highly. I spoke to someone in a focus group last week who said all she'd seen of Starmer was getting free tickets to Taylor Swift and jetting around the world. So it's clearly sort of an unusual problem for Starmer to be facing. I think part of the problem is that every time Starmer does go overseas, it ends up sort of by default, that's a clip on the 10 o'clock news that evening. So people do see it. And whenever they do see it, as you point out, they point out, why is he not tackling issues at home that are really important to me, like immigration or the cost of living? And I think that they're not being told the story enough about why these trips overseas are helping them.
Well, I mean, are they helping them?
Well, that's a question that, I mean, of course, the government will say that these trips are important on things like national defence and border security. But we find that in our polling, only 20% of people think that these trips abroad benefit Britain. And actually, less than half of people who voted for Labour at this election just a few months ago, 46% of them, only 46%, think that these trips abroad are benefiting Britain. So clearly not enough is being done to persuade people that they are helpful.
Yeah, they're certainly not helping on the green issue that Ed Miliband's so keen on, are they? I mean, what's the carbon footprint like?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge. Of course, like a lot of these trips, actually, and this is one of the big paradoxes, a lot of these trips are for climate negotiations. He's been abroad negotiating deals on green trade and on international climate conferences. I've done lots of polling personally and research all about how we can sort of make travel better for the environment. And lots of people do
Ed, sorry, thank you very much. That's Ed Hodgson there on Keir Starmer jet setting. Still to come, Elon Musk, Nigel Farage, Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago. So much more. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. Don't go too far. It's time for the weather. See you soon.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50-60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across the southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to the M62 firstly, eastbound. Better news inside the last 15 minutes. The earlier collision between junctions 25 to 26 is cleared. That was Brickhouse to Chain Bar. All lanes open, but still patchy queues all the way back towards Huddersfield at junction 23 remain. 2 lanes are coned off on the clockwise M60 just before the Trafford Centre junction 10. There's a breakdown there, and that's causing congestion. To Herefordshire and Newtown, the Cruise Pitch Road, the A4103 closed between the A417 and Stoke Edith at Shucknall for investigation work. And in Buckinghamshire, the northbound M1 still blocked, Milton Keynes 14 to Northampton 15. A multi-vehicle collision causing delays on that northbound side as well this afternoon. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You could be joining on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday, the 17th of December, and you're not ready, are you? You know you're not ready. I'm Daubney, sitting in for the wonderful Martin Daubney, who is off getting ready, possibly, or probably in a pub somewhere. This is GB News, and we are broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster. And yes, as I say, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your company. I know how important time is at this time of year, but I'm enjoying your time, keeping me company. Hope you're nice and warm and cosy out there. Should we talk about Nigel Farage and Elon Musk, shall we? At Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. See, look at that picture. What do you make of that? Frankly, I find it a bit strange, some of those poses going on there. Any case, the speculation the billionaire will make a multi-million-pound donation to Reform UK. Just how likely is it? We'll bring you the latest on that one. And yep, this one's going to annoy you. Is this the day Brexit dies? Less than 10 years after the vote to leave Britain could once again be under the control of the European Court of Justice. Please, someone make it stop. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset relations with the EU. But will he just bow down to Brussels again? And is this another blow for Keir Starmer? The new Mauritius Prime Minister says the Chagos Islands deal struck by our Prime Minister, well, not good enough, basically, and he wants to reopen talks on that one as well. And Labour has ruled out compensation for almost 4 million women, yay, way to go, who claim they lost thousands of pounds because of changes to the state pension age, ignoring an official payout recommendation. I'll be reading out some of your very personal messages and keep them coming in on that subject. Really got you angry. Got me angry, that one as well, Waspi women. What is it with the Labour government and pensioners? You know, I mean, what is it? You know, Waspi women, winter fuel allowance, farmers. If you're a Waspi woman and you're a farmer, I mean, really, really good luck with this one. Any case, it's not about what I think, it's about what you think. I want to hear your opinions on all the stories we're discussing today, or anything you want to have a chit-chat about. Basically, it's so close to Christmas, we could even talk Brussels sprouts if you want. So send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Now, it's time for the new headlines once again with Sophia Wednesday. Here she is.
Dawn, thank you. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns. Meanwhile, the automatic right to home educate at-risk children could be scrapped under new legislation being introduced in Parliament today. The Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill follows the case of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, whose family removed her from school before her murder last year. It would give local authorities new powers to ensure children in unsafe environments attend school and create a national register for children not in education. Charities warn the funding promised for family support services falls far short of what's needed. However, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says too many children have been failed by the state, calling the proposals a seminal moment for child protection.
The measures that I'm setting out today are about how we protect children and keep them safe, that we've got much clearer visibility of where children are and where parents make a request to home educate their children, where they take them out of school, that if we have safeguarding concerns or a child protection investigation is underway, we'll make sure that local councils are able to deny that request that parents have if they're concerned about the well-being of children. There's a range of other measures in the bill that we're setting out today about how we all need to work together to share information, whether that's police, health, education, to really work to protect children and to keep them safe. It's a landmark piece of legislation.
In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Cairo for Gaza ceasefire talks. That's according to Reuters news agency. Uncertainty is surrounding Netanyahu's whereabouts, but it's understood a deal is expected to be signed in the coming days. Meanwhile, Hamas said that a ceasefire deal is possible, but only if Israel didn't set new conditions. Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have yet been provided. The government has rejected calls for compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age. The Work and Pension Secretary says paying a flat rate to all women born in the 1950s would cost taxpayers more than £10 billion and wouldn't be fair. Women Against State Pension Inequality, also known as Waspi, say they weren't properly informed about the changes. While Liz Kendall admitted there was a delay in notifying women, she insisted most were aware of the pension age rise. She has now confirmed there will be no compensation scheme, despite calls for one. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says he understands their concerns.
I do understand their concerns. The Ombudsman's findings were clear in relation to the maladministration, but also clear about the lack of direct financial injustice as the Ombudsman saw it, and that's why we've taken the decision that we've taken. But I do understand, of course, the concern of the Waspi women, but also, of course, I have to take into account whether it's right at the moment to impose further burden on the taxpayer, which is what it would be. So, of course, I acknowledge their concern, but we're following the findings of the Ombudsman, and it is a question of balancing those concerns with the taxpayers' obligations, which are already very high, and that finding of the Ombudsman.
Now, a good Christmas deed gone wrong as radio DJ Jordan North was rescued from the River Thames after trying to save a struggling dog from the water. The 34-year-old got into the water near the Hammersmith Bridge after spotting the Labrador, but soon became panicky. Fortunately, crew from the RNLI, who were out on an exercise at the time, were flagged down by members of the public and reached North and the rescued dog in 3 minutes. Speaking while presenting his Capital Breakfast show, North said a big thank you and a massive shout-out to RNLI Chiswick. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, I just want to read a few of these out. Welcome back, Uslop, by the way. Just want to read a few, because a lot of you are getting very, very angry about this, the Waspi decision. OK. Honor says, my mum was born in 1954 and has been a meticulous record keeper her entire life. She literally has receipts for everything she brought going back decades and has lost out on tens of thousands of pounds. She was upset, only suggested £3,000 compensation, but was happy at least her pleas for justice had been heard. She's on the phone in absolute pieces, literally crying. She's been a solid tax-paying citizen her whole life and now feels totally betrayed by her country. Many, many, many of you are sending in messages like that. Please do keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. Especially seeing as Keir Starmer says he understands what you're feeling. Does he? You don't seem to think so. Let me know what you think. OK, now, Nigel Farage and his party treasurer have met with Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort for the first time since rumours surfaced of a multi-million-pound donation from the tech tycoon. Meanwhile, less than 10 years after the vote to leave, Britain could once again be under the control of the European Court of Justice. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to reset relations But how will he just bow down to Brussels? What's he up to? We can now speak with our political editor. Christopher Hope is in the building. Minus mistletoe. I know I keep trying, but he doesn't. He just ignores me. Right, OK, so bring us up to speed on planet politics.
A lot going on. Big things happening with Elon Musk. You saw the pictures there, I think, at GB News, when you saw Elon Musk meeting with the Treasurer of Reform UK in January coming up. Nick Candy with, of course, Nigel Farage.
Right, OK, come on. I want you to do the rest of your report standing like Elon Musk.
Power stance,
right, camera on chopper now, please.
OK, I do my best. Which camera? Camera one. OK, there we are. That's my power. That's my power stance. I'm now Elon Musk.
That's the alpha male power stance.
Can you do it, Patrick? Have we tried this yet?
Patrick, I've been in the building as well, and I'm sorry, but I'm doing it better than both of you.
They met overnight. The politics of this is fascinating. Of course, $100 million is the rumoured donation that Musk might try and give to Reform UK, maybe through the X, the Twitter part in the UK, which is legal according to the Electoral Commission. There was rumours of caps, whether 100,000 quid cap on donations to parties. We're guided very strongly against that, but this government is looking at doing some form of tightening the rules on foreign donations, foreigners being involved in UK politics. So I forecast, if I was being Mystic Chopper for you, this
I like
5 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, is going towards a massive court battle between the world's richest man and HM government about whether he can donate to Nigel Farage's party in the new year.
Yeah,
I think that's where it's
heading.
heading.
We've got money to burn, haven't we, in this country at the moment?
They are looking at some form of stopping. Of course, Musk, being born in South Africa, lives in America, is an amazing business person on many different counts, but is also friendly with Nigel Farage. I should say, in a tease, I'll be interviewing Nigel Farage on his own show tonight at 7 p.m. about what happened in Mar-a-Lago. Don't miss it, people. It's a big one.
No, you want to tune into that one. Anything else?
Yes, on the issue of the Chagos Islands, big concerns about what on earth is happening with this deal. This deal, of course, agreed by Keir Starmer, opposed by Conservatives, maybe by Donald Trump, we don't know, but backed by Joe Biden, to pass over sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, but the base, the Diego Garcia base, where we have a big runway for refueling bombers, and we we also, I think, we look after our nuclear fleet in this area in the Indian Ocean. That stays under British control for another 100 years, but there's concern about it. In the Commons this afternoon, we hear from Stephen Doughty saying that they are looking to conclude the deal with the new Prime Minister there, who is now in charge, who wasn't there when the deal was done with Keir Starmer. But we hear in the Mauritius Parliament that, in fact, there's more to it. And, in fact, there's been a to and fro between Mauritius and the UK since the last update around the 25th of November, when Jonathan Powell, who's a new national security advisor, was out there. So it's a suggestion that the UK Parliament isn't getting the full picture, but the Mauritius Parliament is, and that, I think, might kick off in the Commons as we go forward through this week, because MPs on the Tory side are watching this closely, and they wonder why Mauritius MPs are getting a more up-to-date assessment. And also, we don't even know what Donald Trump thinks. He takes over in January the 20th. He may feel, why are we losing control after 100 years of this base? China is active in the area. Yeah. China could be involved. And, of course, it's a bulwark against Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean. Lots of big things happening. And just finally, on the issue, big issue in our inbox.
Oh, Waspi women, absolutely.
The government says that the legal case hangs on. The DWP was slow to announce the change in the retirement age for about 2 years. The government thinks that 90% of women in that age group knew about it. There were some that didn't, and therefore they're not paying out. For what it's worth, I think the government's got enough issues at the moment. They're paying out a lot of money on affected blood. That's 10 billion. They're paying a lot of money out for mistakes, of course, dreadful mistakes over sub-postmasters. I think a third big bill looks like it's unaffordable for the government at the moment. But I'm not saying that the case they're raising there is not really valid.
No, lots of people are getting very, very upset about that, understandably so. Chopper, thank you very much indeed. We're going to get more of you later on, though, aren't you, with that exclusive chat with Nigel. Can't wait for that one. OK, now we'll speak with a former MEP and political editor of the Daily Express, Patrick O'Flynn, my old colleague indeed. Lovely to see you.
Good afternoon.
And a fellow West Ham sufferer. We're not talking about that, are we? What are we talking about? We are talking about Brexit betrayal.
Yeah.
Drum roll.
Well, people are saying, is Keir Starmer trying to get us back into the European Union orbit by stealth? And the answer to that question is definitely yes. And we know we can't trust Keir Starmer on the EU because he promised Labour would, this was when he was Labour EU spokesman, Brexit spokesman, that Labour would, as a matter of principle, honour the Brexit vote, and then he tried to get a second referendum to keep us in the EU. We know we can't trust him. We know Labour has more than 400 MPs, and more, you know, it'd be fingers of one hand, Labour MPs who wouldn't want us to actually rejoin the EU if they had the chance. So the question is, not are they trying to betray us, but can they get away with betraying us? And I think that's when where the news gets better, because this government now is averaging 26% in the opinion polls, is losing popularity hand over the fist. To me, reopening Brexit looks like, you know, something saying can of worms and a tin opener. And if Keir Starmer uses the tin opener to open the can of worms, then it could pile much more pressure on his government.
He quite likes worms on toast. He opens lots of tins with sort of, do not open this can of worms. He does do that all the time with so many things.
Yes.
Waspy women later today.
Yes, well, I think that might be right, but I think this is more predictably, you know, highly, highly dangerous. So I do think they want to get us back into the EU orbit as much as they can within the next 4 years or so. I personally think that Labour has run out of political capital, and if they open a fight with the British people on this front as well, they'll be in desperate trouble.
They have managed to alienate pretty much everybody so far. Chubba, can they do that? Can they take us back into the EU by the back door?
Paddy's a former MEP, he knows what he's doing there. He says in the orbit of the EU, but the government's saying it's clearly they're not going to move on the customs union, single market or freedom of movement. And there are no plans to enter into this 18 to 30-year-old freedom of movement to allow younger workers to travel to and fro between EU and UK without being monitored. No plans, note. And no plan, and they won't comment on claims that the European Court of Justice could have an influence over us, and no comment also on fishing rights, which also could be sold down the river or through the Thames, wherever you sell fishing rights when we do finally renegotiate this deal over the next 18 months. So sovereignty, they're telling us, Patrick, is not going to be changed by this. But you don't believe them. But they're saying on sovereignty, that remains the same. But we might get closer tied to them, short of sovereignty.
I think if you put European judges above British law, then that's sovereignty being sold down the estuary, shall we say. I think Labour's running out of political capital too fast for that to be a realistic prospect by, say, early spring. You know, particularly if Nigel Farage has got Elon Musk rocket boosters in his backpack. I think they always want to betray us. They always want to get us back into the EU. I think political reality makes it very difficult. And, you know, we're already got a public are in a sort of broiling fury about the one European Court, the European Court of Human Rights, that still has jurisdiction over us on a whole load of issues to do with illegal immigration and human rights for criminals. I think if they even look like they're bringing another European court above British justice, then they'll be in a whole heap of trouble.
I feel like I've been talking about this my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not going to end. I mean,
You're not helping.
It's a process, not an end point. I mean,
after we've long gone... question. Is there an end point to this?
There'll be young people in our positions arguing about this in 40 years' time. It's basically a process, a to and fro process between the UK and EU, and how near we get is about the politics, really. I mean, that's what's happening.
But, I mean, we've now activated this CPTPP trading arrangement, which precludes fully being back in things like the single market, right? I'm actually someone who thinks that at some point Brexit needed to be tested with a government in charge who were hostile to Brexit to see how robust it is. And I'm still relatively optimistic that they won't be able to unpick much.
But there are some lines in the sand. The 3rd of February, the PM, and this is, by the way, I know it's Christmas time, but it's 7 weeks away. In 7 weeks' time, right, Keir Starmer meets with all 27 of the EU leaders. Shortly after that, we expect him to meet for the first ever summit with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President. I mean, these are big moments, and they're being bigged up to us by people around the PM at the moment. So there'll be a moment when things are on the table, they're not clear now, and that debate, the test, I think, of Brexit, as Patrick rightly says, will be really...
I'm going to have to shut you both up now because I'm depressed and it's Christmas. All right, no more Brexit talk. All right, Patrick, thank you very much. Patrick O'Flynn, our former MEP, so he knows what he's talking about, and Chopper, who kind of knows what he's talking about most of the time as well.
Not really.
No, he doesn't know. But what time are you on tonight?
7 p.m. Interview Nigel Farage. What happened last night in Mar-a-Lago? Tune in.
Yeah, lots of juicy gossip. OK, thank you very much, Chopper. Don't miss that one. Now, talking of Keir Starmer, he has met with, what country's in? Estonia. Estonian Prime Minister and other world leaders at the Joint Expeditionary Force Defence and Security Summit, me neither. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is travelling with the PM, lucky her, and has the latest for us.
Well, welcome to the HMS Iron Duke. It's a Type 23 frigate and it's anchored here just off the coast of Tallinn in Estonia, which is next to Russia, as you can probably tell by the fact that it has just began to snow. The Prime Minister has been here meeting the troops, having mince pies. It's been an absolute whirlwind schedule. We started off yesterday morning in Norway. We went to a carbon capture plant. He announced a green energy partnership with Norway. He's come in for a huge amount of criticism, hasn't he? Because he's been abroad, let's face it, an awful lot this year. But his team say that it's because he wants to bring jobs and investment back to Britain. They're holding up money that Norway are investing in carbon capture in Teesside and money that an Estonian defence company is bringing to London as examples of that. Much of the conversation here, of course, has been around defence. In Estonia, the Prime Minister has been at the Joint Expeditionary Force Summit. That's 10 countries. It's a defence and security coalition of the Scandinavian, the Baltic states and the UK. And the guys on the boat here have been telling me how these countries all work very closely together in the North Atlantic, doing training, military exercises. The idea is that they could be scrambled, if necessary, to go pretty much anywhere in the world. Ukraine, of course, top of the agenda. What Donald Trump means for Ukraine. The Prime Minister is firm, announcing further sanctions on Russia today. It's been an absolutely insane couple of days, and we will now be heading back to the UK.
Catherine Forster with Keir Starmer in Estonia, and we're the only camera crew out there, are we? You were saying, Chopper?
Yeah, it shows how this station is growing and growing, and its influence in all broadcasting.
Brilliant. You heard it here first. OK, thank you very much, Chopper. Now, it's time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to become our biggest ever winner. See, we're not only with the Prime Minister, we're giving you money as well. How lovely are we? It's an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Rachel Reeves can't get hold of this bit, and here's all you need to do to make it yours.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Yeah, good luck indeed. Honestly, Chopper, you can't take him anywhere. No, but talking of which, don't you go anywhere. I'll be speaking to a former Tory MP from, as the Mauritius Prime Minister casts huge doubt on the government's landmark Chagos Island sovereignty deal. I'm Dawn Daubney. They do this to me all the time. We seriously haven't got married, right? It's a vicious rumour. However, it does have a ring to it. Martin, if you're watching, Mrs. Daubney, if you're watching, you've got no worries, love, don't worry. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far, we'll see you soon.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Dawn Daubney. I'm not, actually. I'm Dawn Neeson. Martin's off having a nice day today, as I hope you are. This is GB News, and we are broadcasting live from Westminster to you all. OK, let's talk about the Chagos Islands. I think it's probably on our Prime Minister's next travel to-do list. The Mauritius PM has cast huge doubt on our government's landmark Chagos Islands sovereignty deal. Dr Navin Ramgoolam has demanded that new talks take place, despite the UK government claiming he was supportive of the agreement in the first place. Do keep up at the back there. Let's bring in former Conservative MP and former British Army officer, Colonel Bob Stewart. Hello there. Well, there you are. Bob, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. This just seems a bit of a mess. Yes, another one, doesn't it? What do you make of it all?
Well, my position is quite clear. We're giving away a strategic base in the Indian Ocean for the West, and we're giving it to Mauritius, that is actually in hock to the Chinese, and goodness knows what will happen when we do it. I'm totally against the whole idea And as I understand it, so many Chagosians are also of that opinion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it always seemed weird to me. I mean, obviously not being a military expert like yourself, but it always seemed weird to me that to achieve a safer thing with China, we were giving the islands back over to them. That didn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. Why not just hold on to them?
Well, that's what I say. I mean, and not only are we giving it away, we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay Mauritius to do it. I mean, this is just madness. The Chinese Navy is actually swamping the world's nations as it expands hugely. It's already challenging the numbers of the United States at sea. And actually, we're just making, this is an own goal. Why are we doing it?
So you must be relieved then, Bob, to hear that sort of like, you know, the deal might have to be renegotiated. No one appears to be happy with it. And we don't even know what Trump thinks, you know, what he's going to do when he comes in.
Well, that might be one of the reasons why they're making a fuss, because when Trump comes in, perhaps he's going to say, this is silly. We don't agree with this, you know, because the Americans have got a huge base there. And it's a very strategic location. And it's our base as well, and we use it both for the Navy and for the Air Force. And it's right in a really decent location in the Indian Ocean. So we can go from there either east, west, north, or even south.
Do you think the whole thing will be reversed now? Do you think the deal will just fall apart?
Well, I hope so. I mean, sadly, the government of which I was a member until last July, you know, was negotiating this sort of thing as well. So shame on them. I say shame on anyone that's actually going to give away, in this really tumultuous time that we live, give away a strategic asset for nothing. Actually, more than nothing, it's actually going to cost us to give it away.
It will cost us. We're paying to give away sovereignty and possibly security. I mean, Bob, we've got Chinese spies all over the front of our newspapers today as well. How worried do you think we should be by China at the moment?
Should be worried about the whole international situation. Chinese infiltration into the UK has been ongoing for a heck of a long time, as has Russian, as has Iranian. You know, these nations are not benign. They don't wish us well. I mean, Chinese people that say, oh, we really love the United Kingdom. Well, I remind the people that are listening that every person who's Chinese aboard is under duty, a remit, to report back to the Chinese government where it's appropriate. It's not just a suggestion, it's a bid that they've got to fulfill.
Yeah, they don't get a lot of choice, do they? Thank you very much. That's a former British Army officer and Conservative MP, Colonel Bob Stewart. Bob, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. OK, now there's still lots more to come on today's show between now and 6. Oh, my golly gosh, time is flying because I'm having so much fun with your company. And we are including Reform UK leader Nigel Farage meeting Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Could British politics about to be changed forever? But first, let's get the latest news headlines with Sophia Wenzer for you.
Dawn, thank you. Your headlines at 5:32. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns. In a victim impact statement, Sara's mother said she is now an angel who looks down from heaven. In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Cairo for Gaza ceasefire talks, according to Reuters news agency. Uncertainty is surrounding Netanyahu's whereabouts, but it's understood a deal is expected to be signed in the coming days. Meanwhile, Hamas said that a ceasefire deal is possible, but only if Israel didn't set new conditions. Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made a counter-proposal to London and received a response, though no details have yet been provided. The Home Office has ordered another 7 asylum hotels to close, according to the Home Secretary. Yvette Cooper said progress in reducing the asylum backlog meant the hotels would close in the new year. Speaking to the Commons Home Affairs Committee earlier today, she also said that providing additional safe routes for asylum seekers is not an alternative to pursuing people smuggling gangs. And a good Christmas deed gone wrong, as radio DJ Jordan North was rescued from the River Thames after trying to save a struggling dog from the water. The 34-year-old got into the water near the Hammersmith Bridge after spotting the Labrador, but said he soon became panicky. Fortunately, crew from the RNLI, who were out on an exercise at the time, were flagged down by members of the public and reached North and the rescued dog in 3 minutes. Speaking while presenting his Capital Breakfast show, North said a big thank you and a massive shout-out to RNLI Chiswick. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2714 and €1.2108. The price of gold is £2,078.61 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed the day at 8,195 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50-60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
The latest GB News travel. Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long queues if you're heading south away from Glasgow down the M77 tonight. The inside lane on that two-lane stretch closed off at junction 2, the Barhead Road exit at the scene of an accident. On the M16 Greater Manchester, 2 lanes are blocked off clockwise just before junction 10. The Trafford Centre turn-off where a lorry's broken down. It's taking about 40 minutes to get through those queues. And on the M25 on the Buckinghamshire stretch, the outside lane is closed clockwise just after the M40. It's actually just on the Chalfont Viaduct. An accident involving a couple of lorries and a car is being dealt with by the police. In south west London at Surbiton, the Penryn Road, the A240, that's blocked off by an accident in Southsea Road. And there are delays of an hour with some cancellations on trains at Hitchin due to an earlier incident. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. This is Dawn Neeson, identifying as Martin Daubney, tall, blonde, you know, there's just a few slight differences. You get the vibe. OK, now, having wriggled his way into President-elect Donald Trump's inner circle, Elon Musk is now teasing investing into British politics. Nigel Farage has met with the Tesla... Look at that picture. It's that picture again, starting to haunt me. Anyways, Nigel Farage has met with the Tesla CEO at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. It could, that picture, honestly, it could signal a huge shift in British politics if a funding agreement can be agreed between the parties. But what influence could Musk have on reform's direction? Interesting, isn't it? Joining me in the studio now is Chairman of the Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. Greg, lovely to see you. Haven't seen you since. Congratulations on the win, etc., etc. Now, what do you make of this meeting and this picture? It all looks very...
good for Nigel and good for Nick Candy. Nick's been the treasurer for less than a week, I think, and he gets a meeting with the richest man in the world. So I think this is a great move. It's potentially a game changer, and good for him. Good for both of those guys.
Now, that picture is very, very alpha male, isn't it? And it's not about the picture. It's about what this actually means for politics, both in your country and in the UK.
Well, I think. It looks like the UK, I know it could take 4.5 years, but, this is what great advice to take a page out of the American playbook. And I was saying this in Trump's first term. The tax reform and deregulation and secure borders, that's just common sense, but it also works. And I think that's what you get from innovators like Elon Musk and successful business people. And so if the more business people, the more disruptors, the more innovators that you can get involved in politics, the better. Nigel had a real job in the first, phase of his career at Drexel Burnham. Nick Candy, obviously hugely successful property developer, and then, of course, Elon Musk, probably the world's greatest innovator. And so, good for them for getting the brain trust together.
Do you think it will happen? Do you think Elon Musk will invest in Nigel Farage's reform?
I think so. I don't know that it will be $100 million, but he did well over 200 in the U.S. election, and that's just core freedom of speech. He can do whatever he wants with his money in America. I know there might be different restrictions here. If he needs to probably have a UK company or
there are ways around it. It can be made to happen. Yeah.
And look, this comes from me, a Republican, having just been outspent by the Democrats last year. The Democrats had an enormous funding advantage, but I was never one to say, oh, this is too much money in politics. That's just the way it works. If you have a message, the Democrats spent twice as much as the Republicans spent, but our message was better. So I don't think that this kind of money commitment or suggestion that Elon Musk could get involved, that doesn't make politics. It's helpful, absolutely. But I think it's the message. You have to win on the message, win the argument.
Win on the message and stick to the message. Could be a message there, no pun intended. Have you met Elon Musk?
I have not.
Would you like to?
Oh, definitely. And I'm quite sure I will meet him.
Yeah.
I'm imagine in the next, in the near term.
Yeah, but you have met Donald Trump, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
What do you think the relationship will be between the two men? Because they're both, when you get two powerful men together,
Yes.
You're either going to get a complete sort of like, you know, collision, or they're going to get on like a house on fire.
Right. And look, they're both overachievers. They're both alpha males. I mean, that picture was great. The three of them, they're all
I just love that.
Right?
I'm making everyone do that pose now.
And I'm not suggesting I have a crystal ball and I know it's going to be perfect.
That pose.
You never
That
know.
pose.
But look, this is the difference between the Trump administration and Labour here in the UK, as well as the Biden administration, which, believe it or not, he's still president. We bring innovators and business people, the private sector, to government. That's what works. And that should be the model. And what you have in Labour right now is virtually no people no one with business experience. I saw a great chart on this, and Jennifer Ewing pointed it out, that there is virtually no business, years.
That is a point,
in
yes,
total.
absolutely. No, that is true.
Here you have Trump bringing in real innovative people like RFK Jr., like Elon Musk. That's the model that works. And I think if Nigel and Nick can do the same thing and bring private sector people into government, ultimately, that's going to help.
And it could be a bit of a pincer movement, because we also saw at the opening of Notre Dame how well Trump was getting on with Prince William.
Sure.
That seemed a genuinely warm relationship.
Yeah, I mean, Trump loves the UK. And so he might have some issues with Prince, with Harry and Meghan. And ultimately, he really likes the royal family, though, in spite of a few hiccups. So he really loves the UK. This is in great contrast, again, to Biden, who was openly hostile to the UK on many occasions.
Yeah.
And so I think this will be a refreshing change, in spite of the difference in politics with Labour in charge. But with Labour polling where they are, and with the real movement amongst voters here to, sort of reject wokeism, reject big government. It didn't work out for the parties of the right in July, but it will. And I think Reform is doing a great job.
So, very quickly, Greg, we're running out of time. Unfortunately, are we looking at a Prime Minister Farage in this country, do you think?
I hope so. I think whether it's, as the leader of Reform, or if there's some kind of kiss and make up at some point between the two parties of the right. But, what we've had in the last 14 years is not really governing from the right. We've had governing from the center, or even the center left. So I think that has to be fixed, and I think Nigel's in a great place to do it.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Greg Swenson, lovely to see you again. That's the chairman of for Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. Thank you very much, Greg. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, a bit of light travelling, paging Keir Starmer on this one, here is a forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations. Have a look at this.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Unsettled at times across western parts of Europe with some stronger winds and perhaps some outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere it should be largely settled. Fairly breezy around Madeira, though largely dry, just a bit cloudy. Perhaps some thicker cloud moving into parts of Portugal with a risk of some rain, and also fairly breezy around coasts. But elsewhere it's going to be largely settled, lots of dry weather around, though perhaps just a few showers around northern parts of Italy. And the remaining largely settled as we head into the weekend, just a slight dip in temperatures by Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Interesting, eh? Now, I'm just planning my next trip. Just call me Keir Starmer if you like. Any case, now for the results of the poll of the day. Drum roll, please. We asked you, should hospices be exempt from the Chancellor's national insurance hike? Now, brace yourself for this, you'll be shocked. 97% of you said yes, and just 3% of you say no. Come on, 3%, what are you thinking? Have you been to a hospice? Next, I'll be talking all things Sports Personality of the Year, and it's not a contradiction in terms, because that's on tonight. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line, and I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. I hope you're having a lovely afternoon out there. Thank you so much for your company. I really appreciate it. I am Dawn Needham in for Martin Daubney. Not for much longer, though. Running out of time. But it's that time of the year, isn't it? No, not Christmas. It's time for Sports Personality of the Year. Now, cue everyone ever always saying, what personalities? They haven't got personalities. It's one of the oldest jokes. But it's one of the youngest lineups this year, and the competition's 21-year-old footballer Jude Bellingham and 17-year-old darts player Luke Littler even on the list. Also, cricketer Joe Root, as well as Olympic and Paralympic stars Keely Hodgkinson, Sarah Story and Alex Yee. So some exciting new names in there, rather than the old school ones we're all used to. So let's speak with a sports broadcaster, Aidan McGee, the wonderful Aidan McGee, indeed, to find out, Aidan, give us some tips. Who's going to win tonight? Who's nominated?
Well, good afternoon, Dawn. First of all, good evening, rather, I should say. Look, I mean, I must make a correction because it says on our ticker just there that Luke Littler is actually the favourite. That's not the case. It's actually Keely Hodgkinson. I fully expect her to go and win it. That's because she won gold in the 800 metres, both at Olympic level, of course, which we'll know about, and European Championship level. I'd also say there was a pretty good story as well. She actually came into sport through parkrun, and she had a very influential coach as well, who she said that if she actually goes on and wins the thing, she'd like him to receive some kind of award as well. I think she'll have to take care of that one herself, though. I think there might be a slight bias towards the Olympics this year. The BBC only gets sort of one chance every 4 years to celebrate the Olympics, really, and it's an event that they show as well. And I think that overall, though, the event's lost a little bit of shine, a little bit of zest, a little bit of zeal, just for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's not on a Sunday night anymore. They said that they moved it, first of all, 2 years ago because of the Qatar World Cup final. And secondly, because they said that more athletes would be able to turn up if it was on a Tuesday. Well, Joe Root can't make it tonight, so if he wins, they've been in a bit of trouble there, looking at a video recording. And Jude Bellingham can't make it either because he's in action for Real Madrid. But in terms of the other nominees, I think Luke Littler would be as good a nomination as anybody. I can't recall anybody taking one single sport by storm the way he has. He's literally been a fantastic breakthrough act and captures people's imagination. 83% up year on year is the ticket demand for the World Championships as well. He's won the Premier League, but we just don't tend to see sports like snooker and darts nominated. I mean, there's been criticism in the last few days, isn't there, from one or two of the snooker players saying that it's never been nominated properly and never really given the respect it deserves. So I do expect Kiwi Hodgkinson to win it. My only issue, I suppose, is that some of these people just aren't famous enough. You know, you want sport to transcend public audiences. You want people to bring in new people. I don't think we're going to get that if the main winner is somebody who can walk down the street and not be recognised.
Yeah, there is that, isn't there? Who's hosting it tonight?
Gabby Logan is hosting it. It's underway from 7 o'clock. But of course, I'll be watching GB News, of course.
Of course, no, absolutely. No, you can always sort of like, download it and watch it at some point when GB News is, it's not, we're on all the time, aren't we, though? Yeah. Indeed. Aidan, what do you say just quickly to that old joke about sports personality of the year? Well, sports people don't have personalities.
Well, yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think that argument was lost on behalf of the BBC about 30, 40 years ago when Steve Davis won it, when his nickname was actually interesting, wasn't it? Do you remember that? But look, it is actually part of a wider point. I mean, the ratings are down. I mean, they got beaten by Emmerdale this time last year, and I think you've got to have people who are A, interesting, and B, people who are recognised on the street.
Aidan, thank you so much. Always a joy to talk to you. Right, don't go too far, use lot. It's Jubes & Co up next. Martin is back tomorrow. Lucky you. Thank you for your company. Now it's time for the weather with Alex Deakin. Have a good evening. See you soon.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, this is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Looking ahead, and whilst it is going to stay mild for now, we do have some wet and some windy weather coming our way. It's already started to turn pretty windy across some western parts because of an area of low pressure that's tracking just to the north of the UK. As it does so, it's going to deepen, and so we're going to see even stronger winds, gusts of around 50, 60 miles per hour in exposed coastal parts, in particular towards the west. A lot of wet weather coming through as we go through this evening and overnight, mainly towards the north and west, but eventually some outbreaks of rain will reach southeastern parts as well. With the cloud, the rain, the strong winds, temperatures won't drop a huge amount. These overnight temperatures are closer to what we'd expect for our daytime highs. So starting off looking at tomorrow morning, and across the southern parts there will be some outbreaks of rain. Doesn't look particularly heavy here, but the cloud could be quite low, so some hill fog is possible, and there will be these blustery winds. Some heavier, more persistent rain pushing across some northern parts of England, some spray on the roads here likely. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but it is still going to be blustery, windy for the Northern Isles, and there will be plenty of showers. Those showers will have a bit of a wintry element to them as we go through the day. That's because we have some colder air coming in. So although it is a mild start to the day for many of us and staying mild towards the south, further north, temperatures are going to be dropping, and so it is going to be feeling a little bit chillier by the time that we get to the afternoon. Later on, we are going to see some more wet weather coming in from the southwest, affecting initially Wales and southwest England, but this will push its way across central and southern parts of England and Wales as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. Further north, staying drier with some clear spells, but also further wintry showers. The winds will remain strong as we go through the end of the week, and temperatures will dip down before picking up again.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays in Northumberland this evening on the A1, which is closed southbound, heading south of Alnwick at the scene of a serious accident. Meanwhile, in West Yorkshire, north of Leeds, the A61 remains closed at the Harewood turnoff following an accident on the Harrogate Road. On the M16 Greater Manchester, the inside lane's closed anti-clockwise at junction 3 at Kingsway. That's where a lorry's broken down, so obviously heading away from Stockport. And on the M1 in Buckinghamshire, the two inside lanes closed northbound, junction 14 to 15, just north of Milton Keynes. The car's broken down in the Newport Pagnell services I can see on camera. And on the western stretch of the M25, the two outside lanes are blocked off on the clockwise carriageway just after the M40. There's an accident on the Chalfont Viaduct involving a couple of lorries causing long queues all the way back to the M4 interchange. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co.
Right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost.
That's Angela Rayner there, not that long ago, basically, as you heard, saying that the injustice of Waspi women would be compensated within 5 years. Well, I can tell you now, it is a day of shame, if you ask me. Almost 4 million Waspi women will be now denied that much promised and much needed, in some cases, compensation. What do you think to that? What have the pensioners actually done to upset the Labour Party? Get in touch and tell me. Also, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, she has called a flat rate of tax attractive. Is it or not? And Reform UK have called Labour's plans to potentially scrap some local council by-elections a threat to democracy, apparently designed to stop their party's success. Do you agree with that or not? And get a load of this. The EU is suing the UK over post-Brexit freedom of movement failures, apparently. What on earth is going on? All of that and lots more keeping me company tonight. Ben Habib, the former co-deputy leader of Reform UK, and Paul Richards, the former Labour special advisor. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live for your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. Sara Sharif's father and stepmother have been sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of their 10-year-old daughter following years of horrific abuse. Irfan Sharif was handed a minimum of 40 years in prison, while Bainash Batul received 33 years. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, was jailed for 16 years for failing to prevent her death. In a harrowing statement, Justice Kavanaugh said Sara's suffering was almost impossible to contemplate, revealing that in the final weeks of her life, she was tied up, hooded and had plastic bags put over her head. He revealed that Sara was found with 71 separate fresh injuries, including fractures and burns. In a victim impact statement, Sara's mother said she is now an angel looking down from heaven. In other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Cairo for Gaza ceasefire talks. That's according to Reuters news agency. Uncertainty is surrounding Netanyahu's whereabouts, but it's understood a deal is expected to be signed in the coming days. Meanwhile, Hamas has said that a ceasefire deal is possible, but only if Israel didn't set new conditions. Now, it's being reported that the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the Chagos Islands deal struck by Sir Keir Starmer isn't good enough and he wants to reopen talks. It's understood he rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. His government has made counter-proposals to London and received a response, though no details have yet been provided. Another 7 asylum hotels will close in the new year. That's according to the Home Secretary. Yvette Cooper told the Commons Home Affairs Committee today that she had issued closure orders for the 7 hotels as the backlog of asylum cases has now started coming down. In November, ministers admitted 14 hotels had been opened and 7 closed since Labour came to power, bringing the total use to 220. And the government has rejected calls for compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age. The Work and Pension Secretary says paying a flat rate for all women born in the 1950s would cost taxpayers more than £10 billion and wouldn't be fair. Women Against State Pension Inequality, also known as Waspi, say they weren't properly informed about the changes. While Liz Kendall admitted there was a delay in notifying women, she insisted most were aware of the pension age rise. She has now confirmed there will be no compensation scheme, despite calls for one. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, Ben Habib, the former co-deputy leader of Reform UK, and Paul Richards, the former Labour Special Advisor. Good evening to you, gents. You're very welcome tonight. As are each and every single one of you at home, what's on your mind tonight? I bet I can imagine when it comes to lots of you, but you can get in touch all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or you can tweet or X me. I've got to just say, before we get into the agenda tonight, there's so much we need to discuss. I just want to reference that Sara Sharif case, because we've followed this case with horror, quite frankly, and I do just hope that little girl rests in peace, and I hope those individuals that have today been sentenced, I wish that life meant life, that people never saw the light of day ever again, quite frankly. It's an awful, awful situation, and may that little girl rest in peace. And the big story, of course, on the news agenda today will be one that affects many of my viewers at home. I speak, of course, of Waspi. Are you a Waspi woman? Do you know what a Waspy woman is? Are you sitting there thinking, I've never even heard of this in all my life, in which case, where have you been? But worry not, because I shall explain all. Waspy relates to almost 4 million women who, you know, they're grafters, they went out to work, they paid their dues, and they expected to have a state pension, they knew what they were doing, and then the goalposts were changed very, very quickly, and in some cases, many would argue, without the proper and due process when it came to warning people and to give time for those people to accurately plan their retirements. Can you imagine that you're working, you think that you've got X amount of years to go and all the rest of it, you plan your life, you plan your finances, and then boom, the goalposts are shifted. You'd be very distressed, I imagine, by that situation. But many people have picked up the plight of the so-called Waspy women, promising time and time and time again to pick up this injustice and to fix it. It's been a big question mark as to what will happen next, hanging over these women. Well, today we've got the answer. The Work and Pension Secretary said the following in Commons today. Let's take a listen.
Given the vast majority of women knew the state pension age was increasing, the government does not believe paying a flat rate to all women at a cost of up to £10.5 billion would be a fair or proportionate use of taxpayers' money, not least when the previous government failed to set aside a single penny for any compensation scheme, and when they left us a £22 billion black hole in the public finances.
I can hear many of you at home. I've just heard one of my panel breathe a sigh of frustration with that. Now, let me tell you now, right? I could have literally filled my entire programme for so long with clips of prominent people within the Labour Party promising that they would actually do something about this. Liz Kendall, you've just heard from her there. Let me show you a picture of Liz Kendall. Not that long ago, I'll describe it. If you're listening on the radio, she stood there in front of a Waspi woman board, basically showing her support and her desire to define and find a fair solution for these women. You've got Angela Rayner. I showed you a clip in part of her. Let's listen to her clip in full, what she said back in 2019.
Well, the government failed the women who were born in the 1950s. They stole their pension, that contract, that agreement that they thought they had, and then accelerated it so that those women didn't have the chance to prepare for that. We've said we'll right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost. This is their money.
Honestly, right, I could genuinely go on. You've got Keir Starmer, him back in 2022. He's saying this is a real injustice. Why, you need to have this big campaign. He accepts that goalposts were moved and so on and so forth. And I mean, if you're a pensioner or a lady that's been affected by this, I understand why you would have voted for the Labour Party. You would have thought, hopefully, you'll finally get those wrongs righted. In fact, actually, I'll swing myself round and I'll come to you, Paul. Does the Labour Party have some kind of problem with pensioners in this country?
I think Liz Kendall's decision today shows that the difference between being in government and being in opposition. And in opposition, you can wave placards around and you can make some of the statements that you're highlighting. But when you get into government and you open the books and you see the true extent of the mess and you're confronted with the hard choices that governments have to make. And the choice today was, do we give £10 billion away to this group of pensioners, or do we do something different? Liz Kendall, I think, has made the right choice. It's going to cause fury. We know it will, and it is a really tough choice, but this is the situation Labour's inherited. So
I'll ask you again, do you have a problem with pensioners? Because this is now the second time that pensioners have been chosen as priority number one to smack.
Well,
so you've had the winter fuel, you've now got this one, so I put it to you again. Do the Labour Party have a problem with pensioners that have paid their dues their whole life, that have gone without, that have really struggled? We talk about the struggles of today. I mean, come on.
The other half of the announcement today, of course, was a reiteration of this triple lock on pensions, which means all pensions are going to go up, at least £1,000 for some pensioners. And so, actually, of course, Labour is on the side of pensioners. And the triple lock being maintained, public money being spent on those pensions, means that most pensions are going to be better off. And that's a good sign. So, it needs to be looked in the round. And also, as Liz Kendall said today, we're going to get waiting lists down in the NHS. We're going to have more police on the streets so pensioners can feel safer. You have to look at these policies in the round and all the things we are doing for pensioners.
All right, well, I'll look at it in the round then, because another announcement that was made today is apparently we're all so skint and we can't afford to right the wrongs of injustice. We can't afford to keep our pensioners warm. But another announcement, seeing as you want me to take it in the round, is that another £35 million is now going to be made available for support for people in Ukraine. And this comprises £15 million for humanitarian support as temperatures drop in the winter. Keir Starmer goes on. He says Ukrainian families are enduring cold, dark nights, often without heating or light or electricity, he says. I'm telling you now, pensioners will be watching this programme in Britain today. They will be sitting there in cold, dark houses because of decisions.
They're not being bombed by the Russians, though, are they? And this is about supporting our ally Ukraine in a war, an existential war against Putin's forces.
Where's the priority?
So you're comparing 10 million to support Ukrainians to 10 billion.
I'm not comparing 10 million. No, I'm comparing 35.
The Waspi women want.
I'm comparing £35 million, and I've just described 15 of
Well, I think we need to do more for Ukraine. I think we need to put more money into that war because they've got to win it.
But I thought we were skint. To the point where we're literally telling our pensioners, I promise you, I speak to people all the time on this programme, they will be sitting, many people at home, Paul, they will be sitting under blankets, they'll be wrapping themselves in goodness knows how many little layers of stuff. They daren't put their heating on. And whilst it's very tragic what's happening in another country, and my heart goes out to anyone who's suffering, charity, if you want to use that word, should begin at home.
It's in our strategic interest to support the Ukrainians, and we need them to win that war, because if we don't win it there, we're having to fight in in Estonia or Moldova, you know, Putin's forces will just keep on coming.
Well,
it's a war that we've got to win.
No, you've got no evidence.
There's quite a lot of evidence for everything he's done over the last 20 years. He keeps invading countries, and if he gets away with it, he carries on.
So the priority in your mind is fighting Russia, not protecting our own pensioners?
You can do both, because the triple lock will protect pensioners, Michelle, and that's
There will be no... This is a sidetrack, in a sense, but there will be no outright victory against Russia. It just isn't conceivable.
But they can be expelled from the Ukrainian territory.
They will not be expelled from Ukraine. That war has become an intractable war out of which both sides will find it extremely difficult to get out. And the 10 million that was promised to Ukraine today is frankly a drop in the...
It's not 10 million, it's 35 million.
35 million is a drop in the ocean compared to the near £7.5 billion that we've given to Ukraine to fight the war, or the £11 billion, and I'm going to now make my point, £11 billion that we've given to foreign climate change projects, or the £50 million that we declared yesterday, a couple of days ago, for Hayat Tahrir Shams, an al-Qaeda prescribed organisation. We, the British government, are going to be giving a terrorist organisation 50 million quid, apparently for humanitarian purposes. It's all about spending choices. And what really gets my goat is when you hear Labour wrongly and falsely trotting out this £22 billion black hole. Any budget deficit is a black hole. And notwithstanding this false claim that they keep making about £22 billion being in a black hole, in the last budget, there were £70 billion of new spending obligations. £70 billion, half of which was funded by tax rises, and two-thirds of those tax rises fell on the working class.
But the Waspi compensation wasn't funded, was it? There was no 10 billion in the budget for that, which is why Liz Kendall can't afford it today.
The point I'm making, Paul, is that it is all about choices. Government spending is all about choices, and they have chosen not to pay the Waspi women. And I think we've got to recognise that. It's about choices. But the bigger point here, I think, is a failing United Kingdom. A United Kingdom where the social contract is habitually being set aside in the pursuit of saving money because we, as a country, are getting progressively poorer.
Don't forget the extra money for the NHS, though, in the last budget. I mean, there is choices to be made, and we decided to prop up the NHS, and that's a good choice for everyone, including pensioners.
The NHS has had oodles and oodles of cash, much more than there was on the red bus in 2016, spent on it over the last few years. There's no shortage of cash going into the NHS.
I want to carry on this conversation after the break. I'll be bringing in some Waspi women, and I'll be bringing in lots of you at home. My inbox is literally on fire on this debate. I also want to explore that topic that Ben has just primed, the social contract in Britain. We've discussed this before. Do you actually think that has now broken, ripped up, shredded to smithereens, or do you think it still exists and you're still respectful of it and you think, brilliant? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you in 2.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So maybe people are opting for the more traditional ways of meeting people.
Organically.
Meeting organically.
It's the only way to actually... Well, I know some people have
it's worked very well for some people. I mean, I personally think that doing things more organically is probably going to be better, or is more to my taste. But it has worked well for lots of people.
So I absolutely agree. There's a very interesting young woman, she's about 22, who writes on this and has a podcast called Freya India. And she talks about this dating industry, and she said all she ever wanted to do as a teenager was go down the pub and meet a man and fall in love. And the dating apps just don't do that. And she said they've become so, it's just literally people looking for sex. We need to get back to traditional ways of meeting face-to-face, but we also need to stop toxifying it. A man flirting with a woman is not toxic. Men and women have done this for years. Obviously, we need to know about boundaries, but we also need to allow men and women to do what comes naturally.
I think it's also about spontaneity in society. It's much harder to, just randomly go out in an evening in London and not know what you're doing and have a good time than it was, I think, 15 years ago or so.
Yeah,
and if you don't have spontaneity in your life in general terms, then that spontaneous meeting with someone is less likely.
I think it's also where you are, because I was just thinking, as you said, that London, going out to try and meet someone in London is one thing. If you live in a small town and you go down your local pub, there's probably you're more likely to meet someone that you get to know over a period of time. And
but this is also why we need to support our pubs and our hospitality areas, because they are important social integrators. They really are.
Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got Ben Habib and Paul Richards alongside me. Hell hath no fury, like a waspy woman scorned. Goodness gracious me. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. The anger that is coming through from viewers at home is really quite palpable. The disappointment. I think people are just in despair, really, really despairing at the moment about politicians promising one thing and then delivering something completely different. One of my viewers, Catherine, as well, she says, please can you point out to everybody, they keep talking about things like the triple lock. She's saying there's two different types. You've got your new basic pension and your other one. She's saying for the ones that are on the basic previous one, they get left out of a lot of stuff. That's according to Catherine. Who's this? Robbie says, normally, Michelle, I agree with you, but I don't agree with you and the Waspy women on this. You're saying Waspy women only care about those born up to 1959. What about everybody else? He goes on to tell me that he's had some challenges with his pension and he thinks now 64 would have been a fair pension age for both men and women. So many of you just feel so let down. If you are a Waspy woman, Helen, you're saying that you are and that you just feel completely betrayed. Catherine, Michelle, why are we constantly being able to give money overseas, abroad for all different issues? Why can't we help people here? I think that is the million-dollar question that really is coming through thick and fast. The notion of the social contract, I've got to tell you now, loads of you saying, no, Matt, says Michelle, there isn't a social contract between the government and ordinary people. Personally, I feel finished with this country and the place that I used to call my home feels so very long gone. And he says, it is all so sad. That's Matt. Ben Habib, bring you back in on this one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it is all about the social contract. And what we've seen, and I would start probably in 2010, when in the pursuit of rescuing the banks, the Bank of England printed money. And what that did was rescue those who had actually got the country into real trouble and devalue the pound in the back pockets of the working and middle classes, who had no hand in creating the credit crunch of the 2009 period, 2008-2009 credit crunch. And that was the biggest breaking of the social contract from a financial perspective that I've seen in my lifetime. Those who caused the crash were bailed out, and those who had no hand in it were punished by weakening the value of sterling in their back pocket. And then instead of doing something to mitigate the damage that had been done to that social contract, George Osborne, who was then Chancellor, went on an austerity drive, punishing the working and middle classes even more. And I am absolutely convinced one of the causes for people voting to leave the EU was what happened in 2009 and the bailing out of the banks and the punishing of the working and middle classes, because it fundamentally broke the value of money and therefore the social contract between the state and the people. But we have habitual abuses of the social contract. So, for example, we do not police our borders. It is an absolute cornerstone, in my view, of a social contract with the British people that our borders should be enforced. We have, for example, 1.5 million foreigners on benefits in this country, which I estimate costs the Exchequer around £15 billion a year. Then we have illegal migrants who are costing the thick end of £8 billion a year. That's your £22 billion a year just there. And then instead of looking after the interests of Britons, of British citizens, we get constant feed on what we're doing abroad, all these great projects on which we're spending money, which have no tangible and immediate benefit for the British people. And I saw Starmer today defending his inability to commit to increasing our military spend to 3% of GDP. Our armed forces are a shadow of their former selves. We are busy stoking the bear in Russia, firing British-made Storm Shadow missiles into Russia, but we're not arming up in the UK, again, because we can't afford to do it. And that is another breach of the social contract.
Ben, I thought you believed in a small state and lower taxes, and now you're saying spend more on the army, give more to the pensioners. I mean, you sound like a socialist.
No, hold on. What I wouldn't have done is raise taxes on the working and middle classes like Angela Rayner did in the last budget, absolutely clobbering, again, the working and middle classes. Hiring has gone through the floor in the last... The increase in national insurance on employers and national insurance. We've seen a complete freeze in the employment market over the last year and a half, hitting precisely the people which, again, the Labour government promised that it wouldn't hit. I'll just finish. So we have had a non-stop series of massive breaches of the social contract with the British people. It's not just the Labour government. It's successive governments ever since 2009, as far as I can see.
I think people still do believe in the social contract. I think most people in this country support the police. I think they believe in paying their taxes on time. I think they love the National Health Service. I think there is a connection
people
still
who voted
to those
Brexit.
Institutions of our country. I think most people have not lost faith in those British institutions. I think there still is a contract as a result.
People who voted to leave the EU look at Parliament and see it as a body that stood in the way of democracy. That's what we see.
Well, who are these people? I mean, you might, but I think you can't
people who voted to leave the EU. That is it is not about losing faith in the Labour Party or losing faith in the Conservative Party. It is losing faith in the institutions of this country that govern us. If you look at the turnout of this last election, it's a great example. Turnout of 59.5%. Labour Party got fewer votes in 2024 than it did in 2019, and yet it got a thumping majority. And that's because the people are on strike. They don't believe in the institutions. Absolutely.
Well, don't worry, everybody. We're going to carry on this conversation about the EU towards the back of the programme, but I do want to just explore what you just said. You were saying, Paul, that people still believe in the institutions of the police and whatever, and therefore the social contract is still in place. And I don't doubt that. I think that people do, yes, it's great to have the police and whatever. The challenge is, and this is what I would ask you, do you honestly believe, because the contract is, it's a two-way street, isn't it? You put in, and in your hour of need or moment of need, you get out.
Yeah.
Do you actually really genuinely believe that the institutions that you've just mentioned, when people have spent their lives putting into the system, that those institutions are there for those individuals during their moment of need?
Well, take the National Health Service, which I mentioned. I think that has enormous public support. It's almost our national religion, isn't it, our support? You did. You asked about institutions, what you put in and what you get out. You put in, you pay your tax and you get the NHS.
No, I don't doubt that they have
explain
support.
What you meant then.
I don't doubt that they have support. I think everyone still supports the concept and notion of the police and the NHS. I'm asking you, in your moment of need, whether or not, I don't know, you feel like you're about to collapse in the streets or your house gets burgled or whatever, as much as we might love and whatever these institutions, do you believe and do you have faith that they are there if you need them in your moment of need?
I see what you mean. Well, one of our critiques is, of course, there were fewer cops than we needed, so we're going to put more police on the streets. One of our critiques was you had to wait too long for NHS treatment, so we're going to shorten the waiting list. So these institutions, to survive in the same way, do have to be modernised, and there has to be more money put in.
I don't see the NHS as an institution. It's a public service. And it's the result of what our institutions do. Institutions are Parliament, the Supreme Court, the Bank of England. These are the
the
military.
Like it to be social insurance and not have a national health service available to all, do you?
These are the institutions which are being hollowed out. Right, I think we're going to talk about democracy in the next segment. Hollowed out by anti-democratic moves made repeatedly, largely, I'm afraid, on this occasion by Labour governments, not Conservative governments, dumbing down our democracy and habitually breaking the social contract. It happens all the time. I mean, two-tier policing is another great example.
Wow.
Progressive discrimination, the regulatory framework of diversity, equity and inclusion, all a breaching of the social contract with the British people. All of it.
Look, imagine this is your social contracts that you've got at home, everyone. Do you sit and longingly and lovingly caress and stroke this and think, yes, Michelle, the social contract, it's there? Or are you quite frankly like this? You say, you know what, that social contract is not now worth the paper it was written on. How do you feel about that? Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. So much we need to discuss. We've just been touching on tax. Do you think that we should have a flat rate of tax in this country? Would that be a fair, better way of doing things? And I want to talk about local councils potentially being delayed. Reform UK reckon that this is because Labour Party are running scared of their progress. Is it really? Your thoughts. See you in 2.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Whilst it's pretty mild at the moment, we are going to see temperatures dropping as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours or so. And before that, we have some strong winds and some heavy rain due to an area of low pressure that's currently tracking just to the north of the UK, and it is deepening as it does so. As a result, we've already seen the winds strengthening. The strongest winds overnight will be around western coastal parts. Here, gusts could reach 50 to 60 miles per hour, and there will be quite a bit of wet weather around, the heaviest, most persistent rain towards the north and west. With all the unsettled weather around, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, most places staying in high single figures, if not double digits. So it will be a mild start to the day for many of us tomorrow, but quite a blustery or windy one. Across southern parts of England, there will be some outbreaks of drizzly rain and also some low cloud bringing some hill fog. Across northern parts of England, some heavy persistent rain could cause some problems on the roads. Meanwhile, across Northern Ireland and Scotland, the more persistent rain will have pushed through, but there'll be plenty of showers following in behind. Whilst it will be a mild start to the day here, we're going to have some colder air coming in from the northwest. As a result, temperatures are actually going to drop in the north as we go through the day, and so there's a good chance that some of those showers will turn wintry, especially over higher ground. Otherwise, and we are going to see some bright weather for a time, some sunshine developing in many places, and in the south holding on to that milder air, so temperatures well above average for the time of year, but later on some wet weather feeding in from the southwest. That will then push through eastwards as we go overnight into Thursday, clearing away during Thursday morning. And then yes, there are some showers around on Thursday, but a good deal of dry and at times bright weather, but we have a northerly or northwesterly wind, so temperatures dropping. Thursday is going to be markedly colder than the start of this week. Temperatures should pick up again as we head towards the weekend with a bit of rain at times.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Northumberland to the south of Alnwick. The southbound carriageway of the A1 remains closed at the scene of a serious accident. Meanwhile, if you're heading on the western stretch of the M25, the 2 outside lanes on that 4-lane stretch are blocked off clockwise just after the M40. Recovery works underway following an accident involving a couple of lorries causing long queues back to junction 14, the Heathrow Terminal 4 exit. And on the Hertfordshire stretch, further round, the clockwise exit is partly blocked at 19, the Watford turn-off by an accident. The M4 in Berkshire is down to 2 lanes eastbound or London-bound, approaching the M25. A car is overturned, causing long queues back towards Slough. In Essex, east of Braintree, the A120 blocked through Bradwell following an accident. And on the M27 in Hampshire, 1 lane's closed eastbound at junction 7 at the Hedge End turn-off. A car has broken down, causing queues back towards Southampton at the M3. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, good evening. Michelle Dewberry, Dubes & Co with you till 7. If you're just joining, you are very welcome tonight. Ben Habib, the former co-deputy leader of Reform UK, and Paul Richards, the former Labour special advisor, alongside me Honestly, so much response coming in. Shame, shame, shame. That is what one Waspi woman has got in touch today saying, Michelle, it feels like they can give money to absolutely everybody except the pensioners. This lady feels that the Labour Party have lied to get elected aid. Says, Michelle, it's wrong that women weren't giving full notice, proper notice of the changes, and they accept that. But ultimately, what this person's saying is that feminists really should want everything to be equal and retire at the same time, and so on and so forth. What do you think to that one? This one's made me quite sad, Jan. In Runcorn, you said, I'm a Waspi woman, and honestly, Michelle, I feel like crying at the decision today. I feel so let down by the lies of the government. I'm currently sat with my husband. We're sitting under a blanket on our sofa to try and stay warm. She says, shame on this government. Pamela says, Michelle, I'm a Waspi woman and I knew well in advance of the increase. So where on earth have all these women been? She goes on to say it's men, quite frankly, who need compensating for having to work till 65, meaning that they would have paid more into the system, but with a much lower life expectancy. She reckons that they would have received less than men. Well, I can tell you that conversation will continue. I promised earlier on that we'd hear from one of the representatives of one of the Waspi organisations, and here she is. This is the chair of one of them, Angela Medden. Let's listen.
Bitterly disappointed. I think we can all say we expected more from a Labour government after their years of support in opposition. And it's just amazing that they can cherry pick their own watchdogs' recommendations and say, I agree with this bit, but I don't agree with that bit, and come up with new evidence